Hello, hello. Welcome to the Outcast Creative. Sorry, we're starting a little bit late because we realised we had some settings incorrectly for the stream and the chat was disabled. Fortunately, my cousin Anna, with her technical supreme knowledge, was able to quickly rectify this situation so we can get on and talk to you about one of my favourite films of all time from my favourite trilogy of all time, The Lord of the Rings. However, before we get on to that, just to have a little bit of sad news. I do always announce these things as soon as they come into my knowledge. So those people that have been following the channel for a while, or if you've been checking out my industry interviews, you will know two things. You'll know, one, that I'm a huge fan of the Electric Light Orchestra, which was the first band I was ever into when I was a kid. I'm still a big fan of that band. My taste in music is very eclectic, shall we say. And I was lucky enough to interview one of the members of ELO Part 2 / the orchestra. He came on board later when the band was kind of touring in the 90s. I saw that incarnation of the band, actually, and it was superb. Parthenon Huxley, known as Hux, to his friends. The link for the interview is actually on my Twitter because I just did a little post about it today. It's also on my Facebook. Very sadly to announce that he passed away on Friday. Now, he does have an autobiography out, which also, the focus of which is mostly the time he spent touring with ELO. There he is. I have to say that I formed quite a bond with Hux when he came on for the interview, and I really enjoyed talking to him about his background in music. But I think that obviously in the ELO stories and stuff, but I think the thing that was really nice was when we talked about his relationship with his partner, Hell, which spelled Helle. So I might be pronouncing that wrong, but that was kind of really nice. That was a real genuine love story. And those are the kind of human stories, you know, when I talk to people about those kinds of things, I think that's what makes it special. And he was a really special man, and he will be sorely missed. But do check out the interview, and you can support his family and his lovely wife and children by picking up a copy of his biography, which is very good. So, right, let me bring in my awesome co-host all the way from her hidden island volcano base in Denmark. It's Anna Nielsen. How are you?
Hello, good evening. And it's really sad to hear that news. Thanks for shouting him out and his autobiography. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, he just finished it. I think he just published it when he came on the channel, and I really bonded with him. We had some guests come on and we chat, and do you know what I mean? But sometimes you really bond with someone. We had quite a few chats offline, both before and after the interview, and he was just a really nice guy, and just a really lovely human being, and very caring, and his love story that he told me about him and his wife and the family and everything was fantastic. That was like the greatest story of all, you know. So anyway, let us move on to the topic of the night. So for the benefit of the people watching who didn't see our episode last week on the Fellowship of the Ring, we are doing a special episode of Chew the Fat on the Outcast Creative channels, where we talk about a film, movie, TV show, or whatever it may be, in more detail, and really sort of talking about why we like it. I'm not going to do a Chew the Fat on something we don't like. That would be a waste of time. So it's really to shout out a particular film or movie or series or whatever that we really think warrants discussion because it's so good. And of course, Lord of the Rings, you can never have enough videos about them. However, I didn't want to just do another Lord of the Rings is amazing stream. I wanted to sort of focus on one aspect that I really think sells this trilogy, and that is the art and production design. So once again, as with our previous stream, we will be focusing on things like costumes, the sets, interiors and exteriors, props, weapons, this kind of thing. And Anna, of course, will be coming in with her horse minutiae monologue at some point, because there's lots of horses in the Two Towers, even more horses in Return of the King, but we'll have to wait until next week before we get into that. So yeah, and we're going to work through these in order, and the order is scrolling across the screen as we talk, and we'll both be kind of picking our favorites in each of the categories, and it doesn't matter if we both pick the same. And I have a feeling on one particular one, I think we are both going to pick the same, but we shall see. But before we get into it, Anna, would you like to tell people where and when did you first see the Two Towers? Because rumor has it you are a little bit younger than me, so you may not have seen them it in the cinema.
I did see it in cinemas, actually. I was 8 at the time. It was very
what a great kids film. What a great kids film.
I had seen I'd seen The Fellowship of the Ring the year before when I was 7, and I was so excited for this film. And actually, although my parents did not take me to see it on opening day, I was in the US, I was in 2nd grade at the time, and I had a book report that was due on the day that the film came out, but I ended up seeing it a week or so later because it was, my family and I were on our winter vacation. And I decided for that book report, I was going to do the Two Towers because I wanted to read these books. I had read The Fellowship of the Ring, and I mean, there was loads that went over my head because I was so young, but I prepared this little book report. I remember I had to kind of split the story into 6 main beats, and I hadn't probably, like, the book was hard for me to parse as, I'm a very small brained 8-year-old, but I remember particularly the Battle of Helm's Deep and then Treebeard sticking in my head, and being so excited to see how they were rendered on screen. And then I went to go and see them on screen, and I was already a very horse mad little kid as well, and the fact that there was a whole kingdom of horse lords just tickled my fancy so much. I was so excited to see it. But I wanted to ask you, Lance, you said, is this your favorite of the 3 Lord of the Rings films?
It's the one I've seen more than the other 2. I think I saw the Two Towers when it first came out. Like when the Fellowship first came out, I probably saw it about 3 times on first release. I know we saw it, me and my friend, was my then flatmate, who was also a big Lord of the Rings fan. I can't remember his name, but we went to see it together, and at the Odeon Leicester Square. So we were there opening night, packed out, and the anticipation for the film was just, was really, really. So you could feel it in the audience. It's packed, and when it sort of started, there was just this huge roar that went up in the crowd, because of course we waited for a year to see this. When I think I said last week, when the film finished, when Fellowship finished, and the titles came up, there's this huge kind of groan, but the groan of, oh no, we've got to wait, and now here we were, part 2, ready to go. And I also remember there was a really gorgeous woman sitting down near the front who'd come to see the film on her own, and I walked down to the front of the screen and pretended to sort of stand and look back into the audience like I was looking for someone. I was actually looking for an excuse to talk to her, but I bottled it. I didn't say anything, and went back to my seat. You know what? I've just remembered that story for the first time. So yeah, she was really pretty. I can picture her. I think she might have been an actress because she looked really familiar to me. Anyway, so that's where I first saw it, and I think I came back to see it probably about 7 times. And there was I just started dating a girl, and I bought tickets for us to go and see it, and she was 45 minutes late, and this would have been like the 3rd or 4th time I would have seen it. So she said, oh, we can still go in and watch the film, and I was like, no, you're not going in to watch the Two Towers and missing the first 45 minutes. Are you kidding me? So we went and did something else that night, but we did go back and see it again the week after, I think. Yeah. So I got to see this one, and then of course I saw it again. I've seen the trilogy at the cinema about 3 times, the whole thing. So I've probably seen the Two Towers at the cinema probably around 10 or 12 times, and the other 2 about 5 or 6 times each, I think.
What an experience.
Yeah.
I got to see the Two Towers in theaters again 2 weeks ago now, and that was the first time since I saw it the one time in theaters as a kid, because of course I didn't have the spending money or the autonomy to just take myself to the theater, even though I really wanted to. And I had to wait until my parents decided to purchase, which thankfully they did. We didn't have many movies. We didn't even have a TV till I was 6. But they had decided to purchase the extended edition box sets of all 3 films as they came out. And so I had to wait. And I was going into Two Towers having watched obsessively, as many kids my age did, and adults, having watched all of the behind the scenes material for the Fellowship of the Ring and being really, really excited to see this. And just, I don't know if you remember, Lance, at the time and for a few years after, Lord of the Rings mania is still big now, but it was so high back then. People's excitement for these films can't be understated. And it kind of, in a way that sci-fi and fantasy films hadn't really had before, it was suddenly very, very cool. And so my older siblings were teenagers at this time, would go to high school parties, and people would just have Lord of the Rings on in the background at the cool kid parties because everyone was so obsessed with this film. It really dominated everything, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be oversold how good this film is. I think, once we'd all seen Fellowship of the Ring, everybody was, apart from a few Tolkien purists who were like, how dare you cut Tom Bombadil, the most boring part of the first book. Most people were pretty happy that this was in good hands. So we all knew Two Towers was going to be great. And I mean, I'm a big fan of the Ralph Bakshi film. I have it on DVD. I've even seen it on the big screen. I really liked the rotoscoping that they did. It was very interesting the way they filmed it. And of course, John Hurt did the voice of Aragorn, and he's a great British actor. So I'd seen some of the scenes from the Two Towers in that, because it kind of goes up to halfway through the Two Towers, or slightly further, and you get the Battle of Helm's Deep. So I was thinking, I can't wait to see what the Battle of Helm's Deep's going to look like. And, sure enough, it was absolutely fantastic. So,
Yes. Still widely cited as one of, or the best film battle of all time. People are still making video essays about it. I sent you one a few days ago, but people never stop analyzing that particular battle and why it works so well. And
it's a really good... the Battle of Helm's Deep is a really good one to compare with the Rings of Power, when they had the battle of their city, and they did this big battle in the Rings of Power, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The strategy that's being employed doesn't make any sense. The way that they try and use the water in that battle doesn't make any sense. They drain the river of water, and then they're going to cross with heavy armor and all of these things to go and then attack the city. But if you take the water out of a river and you go down onto the bed of the river is very soft, and it's covered in something called silt. And if you stand in that with a lot of armor on, you will sink up to your knees in mud. So you're extremely unlikely to be able to go yomping across a recently vacated riverbed with your very
much
heavy
less
armor.
with the war machines they had, the nonsensical war machines.
I mean, that's a whole other ball game, isn't it? But
we don't have to worry about that. We're about to look at the best example.
Yes, let's not give Rings of Power any more time than it deserves, which is none. Let's have a quick look in the chat to see who's with us. We've had 17 comments here. Thank you very much. So Jill popped in a little bit earlier. There's Jacob Ironside. Seabrew, how's it going? Thank you very much for popping in. Not sure I've seen you in the chat before. Jacob's been on the channel before, actually, and he's a great guy. He's got a channel of his own as well. Blibbity Bloop is someone who's been on the channel before and is kind of specialist in all things kind of British and military. David Macy's in the chat. Anders is here. Good to see you. So yeah, it's nice. What is Rings of Power? Indeed. Yeah, who I don't know. Never heard of it. Like and subscribe, please do. Thank you very much. All right. So as you see on the scrolling titles going along your screen now, and we would like chat to participate in this discussion. So as we do our topics, I mean, please wait until Anna and I have picked our choices. But
you can pop them in anytime. I don't mind.
All right, you can put them. Okay, Anna's in charge, as it's clear, so you can put them in any time. So yeah, we're gonna talk about our favorite character costume first, then we're gonna do interior set, then we're gonna do exterior set. Visual establish, set, model, or matte. So that's a particular shot or green screen that is like establishes the setting of a place or an aspect of the world in the Lord of the Rings. Then we're going to do favorite prop, then favorite weapon, and unique cultural design elements. So something in the design that's unique to one of the cultures in the world, and then our favorite makeup element last. So it's favorite character costume. Now, traditionally, ladies go first, but I'm going first.
You should go first this time.
I'm going first on this. I'm gonna jump in because I've got mine ready, and I want to get in case you've also picked this. You may have. This is without a doubt my favourite character costume for the Two Towers, and this is Carl Urban's character, who is one of the he's kind of in line for the throne technically of Edoras and the Rohirrim, but he's also been exiled. His character's been exiled, so he's got a bit of a complicated backstory, which I really like. And we're introduced to him when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli, while they're searching for the halflings, they bump into them and his group, and I think he's got a great line. He says something like, "Do not look for hope here, because it's forsaken these lands," I think is the line.
Look for your friends, but do not trust a hope. It has forsaken these lands.
Thank you. See, I knew Anna would be completely on the ball with that. Yeah, that's my favourite line of his in this movie. And so what I really like about the costume, there's a number of things I love about the way. I really love the way they've designed the Rohirrim culture, the look, everything about it reflects the love that they have for horses. And one of the things that's great, for example, with this character is the design of the helmet. And you'll notice that his helmet is uniquely different. Not all of the Rohirrim have the horse thing that comes down in the middle. And I mean, I don't know whether that's supposed to symbolize his rank or royalty, perhaps, but it looks great. Really love the combination of the different pieces of the armor. You've got chainmail there, but you've also got this kind of leather metal breastplate that's then got this lovely unique leather design. It's slightly worn because he's been in battle, so it's not new. You can see this armor's got a few chinks and so on, and then you've got these other plates on top of the chainmail on the arms. He's also got a great sword, which is the headpiece of which is two horses facing each other. Yeah, so this is my favorite character costume for the Two Towers.
That's an excellent pick. Do you know what his armor is made of?
Do you mean in reality, or do you mean in the context of the book?
In reality and in the context of the film, I suppose.
I don't, but I mean, I did notice. I know something from production design costume people that have worked on various shows, that there are kind of three schools of armor with filming. There's a really nasty, cheap chainmail. It looks like chainmail on screen, but it has no weight to it whatsoever. It's kind of plastic. And that's the cheapest stuff that they get. And then that goes, then you've got a combination of plastic and metal, which is sort of the middle thing, right up to kind of the proper stuff, but it's made from lighter materials than the real thing.
They actually did make a fair amount of proper steel chainmail for close-up as well. And then really famously, Weta were the ones who designed, by slicing insulation tubing and twisting the links together, they made that lightweight stuff that is still real rings that behaves as chainmail would.
Right.
And the hero suits of chainmail are expensive and very, very heavy, but some of the actors would wear them even when they didn't have close-ups, and the stuff will hold up for the authenticity of feeling very tired.
I think it's quite important because, well, for number one, if you're recording live sound and there's a number of shots where you can hear the chainmail, and I'm not just talking about when Gimli dumps it over his head. And then the second thing is you move differently. You move differently when you've got that kind of, because it sags around you and it has a certain type of weight, and it also just it just impacts the way you move your limbs. So I think it doesn't surprise me that the actors embraced it in terms of just doing other shots as well, because they would have felt like they were more in character.
Yeah, and it really drapes around you beautifully almost. Miranda Otto joked that she wanted an evening gown made out of the chainmail because it drapes so beautifully over the body. But in this case,
did they make her one?
For the third film, for her Durnhelm costume, you can see what she's taken off her breastplate, and she's in the Houses of Healing. It draped over her body.
Okay, yeah, that's in the scenes that were in the extended edition with Faramir, isn't it?
Yes, but in this case, not that many people know this, but Eomer's armor was originally supposed to be green, and this sort of red-brown armor was the one they made for Theodred, who of course dies fairly early on in this film. And Peter Jackson saw the two designs and decided that the red-brown was more suitable for Eomer, and they swapped the suits. And so the actor for Theodred is actually, he's buried in that green armor, but is very, very similar. It has the sunburst motif on the chest, the son of Rohan. It's got a sun on its helmet as well. But this armor, the Theodred armor, Eomer's armor, and Theoden's armor is all made of brass. I mean, they have lightweight versions as well for when you're riding on a horse, it's easier. But they have the hero suit, because they do a hero version of each of them, is made of brass, which is not something you would make armor out of, since ancient Mycenaean Greek times they would use bronze for their armor because that was one of the best things they had. You would never actually make armor out of brass now, but the brass covered with the boiled leather has such a beautiful effect. And then Carl Urban would say, because the shoulders on his particularly are so wide, that he had trouble fitting through doorways, and he had trouble using, whenever they were shooting on location, using the portaloos that they had, because he's like a linebacker, I've got these massive shoulders, I have to turn sideways to squeeze myself in. But he was another one who, as much as he could, he would wear the hero suit even when he was riding. And just one other thing, someone mentioned in chat about the Saxon focus, and very deliberately, especially with Eomer's helmet, it's supposed to evoke the findings, the Anglo-Saxon ship grave found at Sutton Hoo in Suffolk, because that was something that had a big impact on Tolkien. He knew of these archaeological findings, and there's that extremely famous Sutton Hoo helmet that has the removable faceplate, and of course it has the nose bridge that comes down. And Alan Lee, in doing all the designs, really wanted to evoke that sort of depth and richness of culture that you see at Sutton Hoo, but of course, instead of being, Vikings of the seas, these are Vikings of their ships. And of course, these aren't exactly Vikings. They were eventually conquered by the Danes, but Tolkien always kind of lamented the loss of indigenous English culture that happened with the Viking invasions. And he was, in writing The Lord of the Rings, was trying to call back to that. And they really got that Anglo-Saxon influence in the Rohan armor. You see it all throughout.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the film does really well is it makes all of the people from the different countries seem like they've all got their own unique culture. They have a slightly different look and so on. Like when we see the is it the Rahadrim? Who are the ones that arrive on the Haradrim?
Yes.
Yeah. Because we've got that scene that comes much later in the Two Towers where they ambush them. And that's when Sam and Frodo are watching, and just after they've had their tasty lunch or whatever, with the conies, and they all look slightly, they look Indian in terms of their culture, their costumes. There's a lot of Indian and Asian influence there, and they cast people that all look kind of slightly similar, and so you believe those people come from that part of the country. With the Rings of Power, it's a right mishmash load of old bollocks. You just don't have that cohesion with the looks of different people from different places, and that's a real shame. But yeah, potato.
It's such an important element of design and something they've nailed for these films. Many viewers are not going to worry too much about the specifics of each design, but you need to have silhouettes that are immediately recognizable. And especially as you have several different scenes that are in, stone cities or stone castles. There was a bit of a problem early on where some New Line execs were a little confused between Osgiliath and Helm's Deep sequences, because, they're both stone, I guess. And so they worked really, really hard to make them very, very distinct. And as Blippity Blop mentions in chat, for the design of the Haradrim, they used a lot of Polynesian influences. Particularly, they used from the very small island of Kiribati, they used wicker armor, and in Kiribati, so they'd weave their armor, and then they would also have spears that had like pufferfish spines and manta ray stings and shark teeth on them, and they would use that. They used that design element as part of the Haradrim, but of course, there's also a very strong sort of Near Eastern Persian influence to it as well. And then, of course, with the idea of riding very, very large elephants, there's Indian elements as well. So all of these cultural influences are mixed to make something that's not distinctively anything from our world, but it's cohesive within. And so whenever you see someone of the Haradrim, that silhouette is nailed down. You're not confused about who it is at all. And that's just excellent design from the ground up.
Yeah, good point, well made. Okay, well, what is your pick? And also, people in chat, we'd like to know, what is your favorite character costume? Or it can be one of the, it doesn't have to be a main character, it can be an orc if you want. But which is your favorite costume in the Two Towers? So what is your pick?
So my absolute favorite one, and I've studied this one quite a bit, would be Eowyn's funeral gown that she wears for Theodred's funeral. This is a costume that hasn't been broken down by many people, and there's not much about it. So there's
I have a shot of it actually.
Perfect.
I'll get it.
And you can see how elaborate it is. So the design philosophy behind a lot of Eowyn's gowns was to be very simple, to have, she is the niece of a king, but there's still a simplicity about a lot of what she does, and a practicality, suggesting the idea that she can really fight. And this is the richest of all of her gowns that she wears. And so she's got, of course, this extremely rich velvet gown and sort of a brocade underdress, and she's got a whole mantle, a big wool mantle on as well. And this isn't a tangent, I swear. You want a little bit of unpublished Old English scholarship that I swear relates to this costume. So, of course, Tolkien really loved Old English as one of the languages. He's a philologist and a linguist, and he studied Old English among a number of other languages. And he had used Old English as the language that represented the tongue of the Rohirrim. And he loved Beowulf as well. He did his own translation of Beowulf. And for this scene where she sings a funeral dirge, Belocum havat freone frecon forth on Sended, an evil death has befallen the noble lord, and she goes on. That's actually, Tolkien didn't write the funeral dirge. We don't get that. So the funeral dirge was actually written by Philip O'Boyens and then translated into Old English by David Sallow, but they borrowed quite a lot from the Beowulf text. There's a line where Beowulf himself laments, Beolaquem havath Fela Fiorkina Forthansended, like an evil death has sent forth many of my living kinsmen. And that's apart from 2 words, is the same exact line as Eowyn is singing. And the purpose of this, Tolkien used Beowulf to set several of his scenes, like the confrontation between Gandalf and Theoden possessed by Saruman in the Hall of Meduseld is actually almost beat for beat another scene from Beowulf as well. But the purpose of setting the scene, when the costume was being made, Nyla Dixon had already, the script had already been written. Nyla Dixon knew that there was going to be this sort of Beowulfian focus on it. And then I just pulled it up really quick. There is a passage from Beowulf that is essentially the scene of Eowyn singing, and I'll just read it really, really quick. This is from the translation, where he says, a Geatish woman too sang out in grief with hair bound up. This is at the funeral of Beowulf. So she sang out in grief with hair bound up. She unburdened herself of her worst fears, a wild litany of nightmare and lament. Her nation invaded, enemies on the rampage, bodies in piles, slavery in abasement. Heaven swallowed up the smoke. And this is the moment that we find ourselves in, the lowest points of the kingdom of Rohan. This is all me making stuff up, by the way. I don't think anyone else has ever talked about this, but I'm pretty sure I'm right that the Beowulf influence is extremely strong in this scene. And so this gown that they've made, and of course her hair is bound up. It's the only costume that Eowyn does not have her hair loose, and it's tucked up into her crown. And then she's wearing such a rich gown that it probably, the likelihood is that it belonged to perhaps either Queen Elfhild, who was the wife of Theoden, who'd already passed away, or to her own mother Theodwyn, who had also passed away. And the idea is she's put on this costume now. She has to take on the role of being the queen, because she's the one who has to sing this lament. Her family is falling apart. Her brother's been banished. Her cousin is dead. She and her uncle are the only ones left. And the fact that all of this went into the costume design, into the hair and makeup design, that the dirge she was going to sing was written and translated into Old English beforehand, that all of this was known at the point that they were designing the costumes, just compared to modern films where they're like, we were filming and then we hadn't even finished the script. The level of thought that goes into all of this, and then the amount of love for Tolkien and the things that he loved and found important, the linguistics, the Old English, the sense of sort of Anglo-Saxon heritage. It's just gorgeous. Anyway, that's enough ranting about that. Maybe I'll publish a paper someday.
No. I think all of that stuff is really interesting. Yeah. So I haven't got a full-length body shot of her costume there, but I think we've got the general gist of it. That's an interesting choice, actually, because I wouldn't have thought to pick that one. And of course, these scenes are only in the extended, and many, including myself and Anna, would say the definitive versions.
Yes.
Of Lord of the Rings. But yeah, and interesting stuff. Okay, so we'll move on to our next pick then, which is exterior film location. Exterior set or location. So this one was a hard pick for me because it really came down to 2.
I can guess which 2.
Yes, you can. Definitely would not take a genius to guess which 2, but I have to. And this is also one of my favourite scenes in the Two Towers, incidentally. And we may well do a different stream about favourite scenes. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love Edorath. Physical set built on an amazing location, slightly spruced up by CGI, extra houses, things added and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if those snow-capped mountains are actually there, or maybe more snow's been added to them or something. But it is
the
a physical...
snow-capped mountains are real. That's why they only have in early spring to shoot.
Right. Okay. What's interesting is
So
it's a very popular location for people to go, and if you're doing a Lord of the Rings tour, that's going to be on the tour. I've got a couple of interesting little blogs that I found online here, which I'll pull up quickly so you can see this is the location today without anything built on it, because of course it was very strict that they had to leave it exactly as they found it. So of course everything was taken off. This is the blog of the Wandering Blonde. So thank you, Wandering Blonde. I'm just giving your blog a bit of a plug here. Now this shot here with them riding toward it, would that be a slight composite, or is that all natural, you think?
the only thing that is not that is added digitally are the buildings on the lower slopes of Mount Sunday. Everything else, the snow-capped mountains and the sort of the upper city that's fenced on top, all of that is original. And then the shot below, where you can see Eowyn as a tiny white figure standing on the steps of Meduseld, that one, there is no, other than color grading, there's no digital alteration on that one. Other than the fact, you saw it in the cans reel, actually, when you watched it last week. In the cans reel, they had a shot that was pulling out, and they had two guards that were walking a little further down below the Golden Hall. And they decided to use the shot in this film, but instead reverse it so that it was pushing in. So they had to paint out the two little guards so they wouldn't be walking backwards. That's the only digital alteration. Isn't that wild that you can just have all of this in the camera just to film?
I know, it's just an amazing shot. Hats off to the director of photography, who sadly is no longer with us. But yeah, it's an amazing establish. This could have also been picked as our later category, which is, established shot of the world. This would be a legitimate contender. I love this scene with the music, and it's like they're arriving at the city. I think that's also the moment where the flag breaks off, which was, most people will probably know this story, but that actually happened for real, and it was unintentional, and they happened to just catch it on camera, and it was like, wow, that's great, let's keep that in. And it's so symbolic. It's like, Rohan is falling,
That's actually a little bit of a lie. That's been spread. It was a tearaway. It was a tearaway prop. If you go to the director's commentary of the Two Towers in that scene, Peter Jackson will tell you this is the way that it blew was unintentional, and it just worked really beautifully well. It was supposed to be a tearaway prop. They had designed it to be that way, but the way it floated over the whole city, the whole set that they had, was not expected, and it was a really beautiful kind of luck of the draw. But lots of people are like, oh, that flag wasn't supposed to tear. It was, believe me, they'd planned for it.
Okay. Well, you know the answer to this question, because I distinctly remember in the commentaries that that they had to build a gravel road to get to this location, and they used army trucks to transport the majority of the crew and things like that. I'm sure some people helicoptered in, not Sean Bean, obviously, although he's not in this section of the film. And I wonder if this is the gravel road that they built.
It may be, because Mount Sunday is located in the middle of a really remote part of the South Island, which is much of the South Island of New Zealand, called Erewhon, which is nowhere, spelled backwards. And so I don't think roads and infrastructure existed, and I would expect that these were the roads that they had to build. They did have pretty strict management clauses for the use of Mount Sunday itself, because New Zealand's really worried about the preservation of native grasses, and also about, they're worried about introduced species, because rabbits have been so bad for New Zealand. And so under these clauses, they had to, every clump of tussock grass that they cut out, they'd cut it out in squares, and they had to move it to a greenhouse on the other side of the hill where it couldn't be seen. And then they would sort of nurture this tussock grass like babies, and then they would just put it all back in once they were done. But my guess is that the roads to get out there probably were considered improvement of the area and were allowed to stay. It took them about 8 months to build this set, and then they had about 8 days to shoot on it. slightly more, again because they wanted the snow-capped mountains, so it had to be in early spring where there's no snow on the plains but still snow on the mountains. And by all accounts it was absolutely freezing. And another thing is that the winds that will whip down the valley, they get really, really strong, and you see it in all of the shots. Everyone's hair and clothes are flying around all of the time, and they had to, of course this is all a temporary set that's meant to be taken down, but they had to build a set that could withstand the really strong wind speeds. And so there was quite a bit of logistics in there. And then, of course, the roads did have to be built because this was such a big set. They were going to be getting hundreds of extras and hundreds of horses out to this area for various scenes from Two Towers and Return of the King. And you need, places to keep everything while you're there. People didn't stay near Mount Sunday, so extras would be at the nearest town, which was a couple hours away, is my understanding, and they'd have to wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and get on a bus to be there by sunrise. But I think all of that sacrifice and all of the effort was worth it. Bernard Hill, who's my favorite actor. Oh yes, I knew you'd find it. You love the satellite imagery.
Yeah, I do.
Bernard Hill said this is one of the most beautiful place and the most inspiring place he's ever been. And just can't imagine being there. And now if you go back, there's just the wind. Well, yeah, if we pan out, which we're gonna do to see just how remote a location this is, and I think that probably is true about the road, because I remember them specifically saying there was not a road to this location. There's also a bridge. There's also a bridge here to cross this little river, and that's the river that you see Gandalf riding through when he leaves Edoras. So anyway, we'll pan out. There's the snow-capped mountains. I mean, yeah. So this is quite in the middle of nowhere, really, isn't it? It's very much in the middle of nowhere, still panning out. I'm waiting for the large towns to appear. I suppose the nearest, well, there's a few here. These are some very small towns. The nearest city is Christchurch. Wow. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah, it's just such a gorgeous location, and really amazing that they found that hill. It's not quite as it's described in Tolkien, where he talks about a green circular hill that rises from the plain. But you're working within New Zealand, and it's become so iconic to Rohan and who the Rohirrim are. I think it's just probably one of the best filming locations there's ever been.
I was going to say, I don't think many people complain about the way Edoras was portrayed in the movie. It's just simply superb. I mean, I love it, as everything about it, and I mean this shot as well. Now I imagine inside you would know this, the interior scenes in the Great Hall. Now I'm going to guess that they were shot in a studio.
Yes, that's all. That's the Golden Hall of Meduseld is all an interior studio. I think it's one of their studios at Stone Street Studios in Wellington. So when you walk in and when you walk out, it's a completely different location.
I'm wondering if inside that building, which was the biggest building that they built up there, they had things like the toilets and people could sit down and eat at tables and that kind of stuff.
Not toilets, but they stored a lot of equipment there, I believe.
They must have had portaloos up there. I mean,
yes.
So but they would need to. You've got to hide the portaloo. So it's the portaloos have got to be hidden in this set somewhere. Yeah, but look at that view as well, with those snow-capped mountains in the back. This is all real stuff, no AI or CGI here.
And you see, they designed the city such that when you shot from the steps of the Golden Hall, where we are now, that everything you would see would be in camera. So they didn't build the whole dike that goes around the dike and the fence. The dike and thorny fence surrounded it. They didn't build the whole fence, but they built the gate portion, which is also a filming location, because we see many times people riding in and out of the gate. And they've set up the layout of the city such that when you film down the hill like this, you don't see all of where the houses that are CGI would be, but you see down to the gate. And also it's something wild for all of the buildings, and of course they've got these sort of very Viking-esque cross timbers. Some of them are horse heads, some of them are griffin heads. But they've got all these thatched roofs, and at the time there was one company in all of New Zealand that did traditional thatching with stooks, with bundles of straw, the way you would do it. And I believe it was 3 guys who were just coming out and doing all of the thatching just the old-fashioned way on the roof. I believe they are a little bigger now because, of course, the film industry in New Zealand has really taken off as a result of this, and lots of period or fantasy pieces will want medieval looking thatching for their buildings, but just that they were sourcing often very young, very not so experienced, but very energetic and talented creatives to do all sorts of things, to do all of the work in Weta, that they were finding, native New Zealand talent to come and really contribute to this. It just seems like it was almost an all hands on deck effort of the whole country, and loads of people who were in New Zealand 20 years ago just remember that mentality. If you weren't working on Rings, you knew people who were, and it was just so huge.
Yeah. Great location. That's my exterior location pick. So that's our number 2 topic. What's yours, Anna, and what are people's choices in the chat? Got a few to choose from. Let us know.
Unfortunately, that would be my pick as well, so I don't need to add too much more than that.
I mean, I did think you might have gone for Helm's Deep, which is a fantastic location, of course.
We'll talk about that soon enough. To answer David Macy's question in chat, my understanding is that most of the dialogue, almost all of it, in fact, was ADR'd for the film. It's really, really well done ADR, but a lot of times the audio that they would get just wouldn't really be usable. Not all of it is, but for anything that had heavy wind, they would have to ADR, and then also all of the Orc and Uruk voices, because the stunties are not necessarily actors who can do the accents required. And then even if they were, they'd have to project through layers and layers of prosthetics and false teeth. And so I know that they do quite a lot of ADR. So later in this film, where Aragorn speaks to a young boy who's sharpening a sword, Hama, son of Haleth. That's actually the son of Philippa Boyens, one of the writers who was working on this film. And he did his lines, but when it came time, like 3 years later or 2 years later, to do the ADR, his voice had broken. So they got a British actor instead to do all of the ADR lines for what's his name, Boyens.
Right. I bet he was gutted.
No doubt.
That's a bit like
his face gets to be in the film at the very least, and he does wonderfully.
That's a bit like Never Ending Story. I don't know if you know the story about that. The American kid who played Atreyu, his whole dialogue was voiced by somebody else, because
I had no idea.
Yeah, they loved the way he looked, but he had this really like Californian, kind of really strong Californian accent, which just didn't work. And so there was a lot of NDAs involved. But Warren Sire, who's a British actor who's a friend of mine, who was in Bugsy Malone with me when we were kids, he ended up revoicing it all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's
I had no idea.
Not big public knowledge, but it is now. I don't think anyone cares now, so I think it's fine. But yeah, so indeed. So there you go. So quite common for those things to happen. I mean, on the James Bond films, especially the Sean Connery era, nearly all of the villains and nearly all of the Bond girls had their voices revoiced by somebody else. So Goldfinger, different actor doing the voice. The villain in Thunderball, different actor doing the voice, and same for both the Bond girls in those films. And yeah, it's quite common back then. So okay, so we both,
for your looks.
You got to, at the end of the day, film is fantasy. You're doing whatever you need to create the final vision, and no one's going to blame you know, if a film's good or not, it's always the director. He's first in the, him or her is always first in the chopping block for disapproval or approval. So it's their decision ultimately, I think, whether these things are done or not done. Yes, we both picked Edoras. Great choice. We'll move on. Now, my choice for this next one is quite unusual because next choice is interior location, right? This is actually an exterior location in the film, but it was shot inside a studio. So that's why. So it's kind of a little bit. I'm kind of bending the rules slightly, but as I made them, that's fine. So, and this is Fangorn Forest. Is the one that I like.
I had a hunch you'd go for this one.
There's not a lot of interiors to pick in the Two Towers because so much of it is set outside. You know, you've got maybe 5 or 6. And I did think about picking the hall in Edoras, but I thought, well, I'm already picking Edoras for my exterior location. I don't want to. So, yeah, the scenes in Fangorn, part of the reason I like them, I'm just trying to get the best shot of it I can here, is I like the fact that the forest looks odd, and that's kind of underscored by the line when they're in there, and Legolas says this forest is old, very old, and you can tell that like the trees are talking to each other and stuff, but it just sort of looks creepy. And to create forests in studio interiors and make them work is quite difficult. Another film that did it for a huge sequence was Krull, which you've probably seen, the fantasy film Krull, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you like it? Is that a fave of yours?
Yeah, I quite like any fantasy films. I wouldn't say it's a favorite of mine, but I'm always I love any fantasy, really.
Yeah. So I mean, the sequence in that where the Slayers rise up out of the water, that's a great scene, which I've shown at my annual movie quiz many a time. So here's one shot with Merry and Pippin. It's actually it's all part of the same set and shot at different views and angles, but it's the sequence when just before Gandalf the White is revealed, when Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn are kind of going through that section of the forest is the bit that I really like. But this is also the same set. Everything looks really real. It's still got a set vibe, but it's an incredible piece of production design and from the art department. And again, all the leaves and the way the trees twist, and they're trying to make each tree like a character. I really like it. So I don't know about to what extent Fangorn was a miniature. I think that's for the bigger shots.
Quite a bit of it was a studio set. The only real compositing ones into miniature was when they already had to blue screen because they had the hobbits being carried by Treebeard.
Right. Yeah, that's and also when the trees are emerging from the forest, and I imagine all that was kind of a bit of a blend. Yeah. So that would be my interior pick. As I said, not spot for choice in this movie, but I do think it's a very effective and extremely well done set that the actors and also the DOP make very good use of. I love the way it's lit, the shadows, all of that. So yeah, that's my choice.
And I think it quite works for having this very enclosed studio feel to it. It's almost theatrical in the sense of like a theater production. Yet the Fangorn, of course, is really, it's supposed to feel very closed, very stifling. And they're, having the problem in that we've seen several other forests in these films already. And how do you make each forest unique? How do you make it so that it has a character that immediately sets it apart from other forests that we've seen. And this is one where they would not find a location in New Zealand that had the extremely gnarled, closed-in, stuffy character that they wanted. They would have to build it. And so they did build quite a few large trees. And I believe they actually went to they'd been taking impressions of bark off of they've been molding bark essentially and making molds of it that they could then use to cast the urethane and polystyrene that they were using to build their studio trees out of. And so they went to quite a lot of effort. And then same as with the white tree, which is primarily built out of driftwood. They also, I believe, went down to beaches and collected quite a bit of driftwood that became some of the smaller branches, because driftwood will just have that bare, gnarled, twisting feeling to it that was exactly what they wanted for these sets. And yeah, it's just very moody. You see different parts of Fangorn. You see parts that are very dark and scary. You see parts that seem lighter and maybe a bit more gentle or wholesome. And you don't get the idea necessarily that it's an evil place at all. They've really captured the mood that they want you to feel inside of Fangorn, that you need to be on your toes at all times because things might be out to get you, but that it's not a place of evil necessarily.
Right. Necessarily, yeah. But you might get eaten, but you know.
Yes, there are some parts of it where the hearts of the trees are black and they will harm you if they can.
Yeah. This is another good shot actually of that set and more kind of what I was looking for. So let me pull this up real quick. There we go. This is the moment that Gandalf the White appears. I love it with this scene, the way they make it look like it's going to be Saruman, and they even have sort of not Ian McKellen's, Christopher, what's his name?
Lee.
They have, Christopher Lee. They have his voice at first, and they sort of then blend it into Ian McKellen's. It's very well done. Very well done.
Yes, excellent scene.
Yeah. Okay, so what is? Technically, this is an exterior location in the story because it's outside, but it's an interior set, so I think it counts. What is your pick in this category?
I'm also going to cheat just a little bit, but I think if you can pick this one, my choice will be allowed as well. And we can talk about Helm's Deep for a little bit, the set of Helm's Deep, which they built in an abandoned quarry up I think it was like 10 or 15 minutes outside of Wellington. It wasn't that far. And so, of course, a lot of the shots overall of Helm's Deep, like that one right there that you've got on the screen, is their quarter scale model that they built. And so they built the entire fortress in quarter scale. The gate was actually large enough that if you crawled on your hands and knees, you could crawl through and into it. But they built this extremely high detail model. And then kind of in the same quarry shelf, but around the corner, they built quite a few of their sets. So they had the gate and the causeway area. They had parts of the deeping wall. And then they had some parts of the fortress built within, including some of the sort of exterior, interior courtyards. I believe the hall was an interior set elsewhere. But all of the shooting, when they filmed the Battle of Helm's Deep for 4 months, all at nights, night shoots in the rain, all of the time, all of these locations were in that abandoned quarry, and they had quite expansive sets for these different parts of Helm's Deep because it had to be large enough to fit hundreds and hundreds of extras. And I quite like the design of Helm's Deep, the way they've done it, because this was one. So Alan Lee and John Howe as the concept artists, I'm not sure quite how they decided it, but they were broken down to do different things. So like Alan Lee worked quite a bit. Yes, there's that beautiful model. Alan Lee worked quite a bit on the Rohan stuff. John Howe did quite a lot on the orcs and a lot of the evil creatures, but they overlapped on a lot of their projects, and Helm's Deep was one of them because Alan Lee, of course, had kind of taken charge of the Rohirrim and their design aesthetic. Well, John Howe is an expert in medieval fortifications and in fortresses. And so he was, and of course, armor, as everyone knows. He was able to give a lot of advising on how a fortress like this might actually function and how they could bring it off of the page and make it work in a way that is very believable, and then it's also for the film. And so some of the
Mm.
design aesthetic behind this, they considered initially building a huge. They designed this huge underground stable for Helm's Deep, and they had all of these tiers and ramps. But then they drew back from that idea because Rohan is not a culture that builds many castles out of stone. And this particular stronghold that they've inherited was actually built by the ancient Numenorian sea kings. They called it the Fortress of Aglarons back then, which in Sindarin means like gleaming caves in reference glittering caves in reference to the caves that we see behind it. And when Errol the Young founded the kingdom of Rohan and was given the province of Kalinardhun to be his kingdom by the Gondorians, this fortress was given over to the people of Rohan as part of that symbol of friendship. And so the Rohirrim changed its name to Soothburg in their language. And I can't remember what Sith means in Old English. Oh my gosh, I'm a fraud. But then, of course, the 10th king of Rohan, Helm Hammerhand, had his stand there. And after that, the name of the fortress was changed to the Hornburg, and the valley behind the fortress was called Helm's Deep, although lots of people just call the fortress Helm's Deep as well. And so this is supposed to be a fortress that has an ancient history, much older than the Rohirrim, and has been modified by them in some ways. You see a statue of Helm Hammerhand, and there's definitely some of that Rohirric design element, but this is supposed to be, built by the Numenorians, and they have just taken this place and made it their own. And you see that, once again, that depth of history in the design of it. And then, of course, when they're building the practical sets, which aren't, arranged like that model you see, they had to build part of a ramp that was big enough to ride horses up and down, and have the Uruk-hai on. And they had to have pieces of the wall and pieces of the ground and the culvert, and they had to make it's all built out of polystyrene, of course, and they had to make everything strong enough for people and horses to ride around as well. So there was quite a bit of structural design in place, and I'm sure chunks of the fortress would get knocked about. But in this case, because how they'd scheduled the sets, they'd budgeted something like 350 sets, and then they were making like all of these incidental sets at the same time. But they had already shot from the filming schedule, they'd already shot parts of the Fellowship of the Ring. And so they could use some of those set pieces and then repurpose them into Helm's Deep. So a lot of the polystyrene rocks that they used and then completely redressed, you'd never tell, but a lot of them come from Weathertop, and then a lot of them are set pieces from Amon Hen as well that have just been retaken, recarved, re-weathered, repainted in sort of that more blue-gray stone, and built up into this fortress. And you would never know that they were budgeting, they were recycling whatever set pieces they could so that you don't have to build from scratch. And once again, the good folks at Weta are having to make entirely new rock textures. They're trying to make all of these stones look as distinct as possible, and they did an excellent job. And then, of course, since they had to have horses riding through it, and horses would slip on the surfaces they had these ramps made out of crushed it was like compacted gravel and sand for the horses to ride on, and then they had to shoe all of their horses with rubber horseshoes so that horses wouldn't slip on the ramps because they didn't want any accidents. And just it was an excellent job that they did. Yeah, that overhead view really gives you a good idea.
Yeah.
So these are some of the practical shots, or sorry, the full size sets where they did a lot of the filming in bits and pieces of the fortress.
I'm guessing this one to the right, that looks like the full-size one.
Yep, that's the full-size one. So all of the scenes of walking on the fortress walls.
This might be another section of it. Maybe, I don't know if that's the smaller one. But I mean, it gives you an idea of the scale looking at this overhead.
And that's not even all of it, because there's loads of parts of the Deeping Wall. And of course, everyone who was filming on that, it has to be one of the most grueling film shoots there ever was, because again, they've got these rain towers. This was actually something for those who were in the US and got to see the little Peter Jackson interview before the theatrical release of Two Towers. He talked about this a bit, was that normally he was doing first unit directing Monday through Friday. And then of course it was Warren McAfee who was doing second unit directing for the Helm's Deep footage, where it wasn't, key actors. However, Peter Jackson wanted to direct some of the second unit stuff as well because he had lots of ideas for key moments in the battle and how it would go. So second unit was running, and of course night shoots the whole time. They were
Yeah.
running Tuesday through Saturday, so that there was one day a week where Peter could go down to the quarry and could direct some of those moments on Saturdays if he wanted. And he said some weeks he would just be directing 24 hours in a row, direct all day, and then go right into directing all night at Helm's Deep. And so he was not spared the grueling nature of it. And you just got used to being wet. You got used to being freezing. You got used to whether you're wearing armor or whether you're wearing Uric prosthetics, like it's just all miserable. And it looks phenomenal. All of that effort was worth it. And
it's one of the best battle scenes in a film ever. I mean, you could argue it's the best in the trilogy because there's something about it which makes it more interesting than the Minas Tirith battle. I think probably because of the scale of that, you think more about the CGI watching it, whereas with this one you don't. They had 120 days to film this, so that's 120 days of night shoots. Just think about that for a second. And these are the rain towers, which I've used one of these on a short.
My goodness.
We had a really small one on a short film one time, and the actors were filming under these rain towers for 4 weeks. They did all the shots in the rain for 4 weeks. So imagine that, because I can tell you now, a lot of people would have come down with colds and flus and things like that because you do. And there's an interesting story here which you probably know about. This is a really great article. I've put the link for it in the chat. It's all about the battle for Helm's Deep, and one of the anecdotes here is that stunt guys choreographed the sequence and Vigo wasn't ready. He got smacked in the mouth and broke his tooth. But unlike most actors, he didn't say, "Call my agent." He searched through the muck, found his tooth, put it in his pocket and kept going. And after that, after they finished that day, they got him to Peter's dentist for an emergency repair. Came straight back to work the next day, no complaining. That's a sign of Vigo's character. I mean, that's the kind of actor you want working for you.
On that, I don't think the story is anywhere on the internet, but I heard it at a convention once. Billy Boyd has his own emergency dentistry story from the filming Lord of the Rings. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, go for it.
It's so funny, and I'd never heard this one before. I don't think it's very well known, but Billy Boyd was, was in a panel and was talking, and I was, just there listening, and he was saying one time he was, they were going to be doing some filming, and I think it was as they're journeying to the gates of Moria, but he starts to feel in the morning, he's been put in makeup and everything already, and he starts to feel this real pain in his back molar, and he's like, oh my goodness, I can't, I'm not going to do the Scottish accent, but imagine Billy Boyd's voice. He's like, yeah, I can't go on like this, I need to have this looked at. And so they take him off set and take him to the dentist, but he's like, and of course at that time, the costumes, like none of the films were out at this point because this was during principal photography, and so everything's super secret under wrap. They put him in a big cape to kind of hide his hobbit costume and put him in these big moon boots to hide the hobbit feet and take him to Pete's emergency dentist. And she looks at it and she's like, I'm gonna have to drill. And he's like, well, I can't have Novocaine, I've got lines this afternoon, I can't have my mouth numbed up because I need to be able to deliver my lines. And she was like, okay, I will start to drill, and you tell me if it's too much, and we'll do my best. And so Billy Boyd underwent having his tooth drilled and filled without Novocaine because he wanted to give the best performance he could. But what was really funny was he sweated so much that his hobbit feet fell off. And at the time, they've improved the process by the time they filmed the Hobbit films. But at the time for Lord of the Rings, the only way to apply Hobbit feet realistically was you had to stand for about an hour and a half while the prosthetic cured onto your feet, because they had these latex feet and they would glue it on, and you had to stand up so that the glue would cure correctly. And you couldn't even sit down during that time because the flexing of your ankle and then the airbrushing that they did around your ankle would make it look unnatural when you stood up. And so Billy Boyd's like, my hobbit feet fell off because I'd sweated so much during this dental procedure. And so he's like, I walked out holding my hobbit feet like this, and I had to go back to the trailer, get them glued on. It took another 2 hours, by which time the Novocaine would have worn off and I could have done my lines no problem. But that's not a well-known story at all, but it's just the amount of dedication. It's not just Vigo, it was every single actor and every person who was working on this shoot was just so determined to go through quite a bit of pain and suffering to make this the best product they could, or the best result.
Yeah, I used to get ulcers whenever I had the injections. So at one stage I said, I'm not having any more injections. I'll take the pain. And I remember one time I blacked out in the dentist chair.
Oh my gosh.
Because the pain was so intense. But yeah, well, that's what you get when you don't look after your teeth as a kid. So for the benefit of all your children watching at home, brush your teeth. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Helm's Deep is a fantastic pick. I mean, interior location, I don't know if I can give you that, but
there's the Helm's Deep armory and
model stuff. But even that is actually technically outside that big 3/4 model. But
and yeah, most of the courtyards and everything. Did you know there's a deleted scene that no one's ever seen any part of, where Theoden goes to address his men in the armory? At some point, I believe they would have placed it after the 10,000 versus 300 speech that Nele Tedain Duncanaminique speech that Legolas gives. But the problem was Bernard Hill is an excellent actor, and the speech that he gave in the armory was so rousing that it kind of dispelled the sense of tension and dread that was building up to the Battle of Helm's Deep, because you started to think that, oh, maybe these men of Rohan, maybe they truly do have a chance. And so they had to scrap that sequence entirely, because the whole point was building up this sense of horror of what's coming. And that looms over the second part of, well, the middle third of the film, until the hammer finally comes down and the battle begins. And so I understand cutting that scene for a storytelling point of view, but I love Bernard Hill more than any other actor. And I would give anything to see that scene as they shot it and as they cut it together. Peter Jackson, sometime collector's edition for home video. We want to see all of the scenes, even if they don't fit in continuity, even if it's not a finished cut. We want to see everything.
I would argue as well that you know, that should have been a deleted scene when they brought them out on DVD. They should have had it on the special editions. There's so much stuff on the special editions. I'm sure they could, you know, we could have had that instead of was it The Long and the Short of It, that film that what's his name? Somebody made a movie, didn't they, during the filming of Lord of the Rings? One of the cast made a short film.
And there was also an official documentary that was done by Costa Boats during the filming as well. It's different from the appendices stuff. So people who are interested, look up the Costa Boats documentary.
I'm not sure if I've ever seen that one. How long is that?
Absolutely should.
I mean, I might have done it. Just, you know, I've watched so much stuff on it, it's hard to remember. This is a section of the wall being built. So it's quite interesting to see.
With the famous shield sledding scene.
Shield skateboarding scene, yeah.
I remember in the theater, my dad leaned over to me at that moment and muttered, "This is so 2002," because my dad's a bit of a book purist, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, like you'll be fine, Dad. Calm down."
No, I mean that was that did get a bit of a kind of, it got a laugh, but at the same time it was a bit like, what? You know, what's going on here?
That's I love that photo. The crying child.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of people have done different blogs on the filming of this stuff. This is interesting to see everybody waiting.
And so many people worked on Helm's Deep that, you know, a lot of them are still around. They're always happy to talk about their experiences. So there's lots of very little known interviews and things out there that you can find people. Like I told you, I'm friends with one of the people who is a writer of Rohan. But yeah, there was a lot of minor injuries, only one real major injury for the filming of Helm's Deep, and it's actually in the film. If you remember, there's a stuntman who gets hit by a massive spear from a spear caster, and he gets blasted backwards into the wall. And the stuntman, it was all set up. He was on a harness, but he was thrown into the wall and actually broke his leg quite badly in a couple of places. And I believe that take is the take that's in the film.
That's when you get basically
so
hit by the grappling hook arrow thing.
Yep. And so his sacrifice doesn't go to waste, but his leg was broken in that scene.
Oh, ouch, 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 ouch. Okay, we've been going for an hour.
Yeah, we've got to go on.
and we've only gone through our first three categories.
I knew sets was going to take a long time. There's just so much to say.
Indeed. Well, never mind. Category 4 is which one? Remind me.
The visual establish, a nice matte painting or a good scene that really sets
funnily enough, I mean that really relates to this. There's two shots. It's the first time we see Helm's Deep, and then also this shot, which sets up the battle when the army arrives, which is why I had this ready. So I really like this. I mean, I can't tell if this is the actual set combined with CGI, this one, or if this is the miniature version with CG in this shot. It's I can't.
That
tell.
Would be the miniature with.
I think it's miniature, right? Yeah. Greetings from Arizona, Jerry. Thank you for popping on, dude. I've been to Arizona many times.
Oh, nice.
I've stayed at the Mission Palms Hotel there for a gaming convention that happens once a year. Anti-Derivative Jill is here. Do check out Jill's channel. Lots of cool Star Trek stuff on there. Great friend of mine. But I'm going to try and find the other shot that I'm talking about. So why don't you tell us what yours is while I'm having a look for that?
One of my favorites would be it's a mixture of a model and a matte painting, but it's quite a small scene in the films, but would be Gandalf fighting the Balrog. In the book, he calls it the Battle of the Peak because, of course, he's fallen down all of this way and he's ended up in the pool of water below the bridge of Khazad-dûm.
Are you talking about the wide shot when you see them dropping from the top of frame? Going down
that's such a good shot. But my favorite would be the moment where he raises a sword, gets some lightning, and puts it into the heart of the Balrog, because that scene has to be shown. But of course, it's not explicit in the book because the magic is quite vague how you show it. And I think everything about that, because they fight on the peak of Celebdil, which is it's one of the mountains beside Cahadras, is one of the mountains that they fight on. And the idea is they've gone up this endless stair, Durin's stair, and Gandalf has been in the deep parts of the world with these nameless things not even Sauron knows, and he's so terrified by them he actually clings to the heel of the Balrog to get all the way up there. And we just see the part where he's fighting on the peak of Celebdil alongside Durin's tower, which was, had been so lost that people said it didn't exist. And I just love the image of that setting, that, it's a model and a matte painting together, but just how do you take that fight from the page and how do you represent it in film? How do you interpret what it is that Gandalf's actually doing to, smite down his enemy? I think that tiny little sequence is just so gorgeous.
Yeah. I wouldn't have expected you to pick that one, actually, but that's a good choice.
Well, the one you just said of the one shot of them falling from such a far scale, falling into that cavern, it's absolutely gorgeous, where there's just this little teardrop of flame.
Funnily enough, I've just found that, so let's have a quick look at it. And then I've also got a shot of your thing that you're talking about as well. Let's just get this one up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so because I love the way slowly this image gets illuminated by the fire as it's falling towards the water. I think it's a really, really clever sequence in the film. Obviously, this is a CG shot, but it's very effective. Then we've got a couple of shots of the fight going on. There's another one. Oh, hang on.
I love that scene. That's
the one I'm looking for. There. So this is the whole bit that you're talking about, basically. The scene that you said you love, are you talking about which one?
Yes, Bernard Hill's, well, all of it, but Bernard Hill's scene at the Barrow is just gorgeous.
No is it no parent should have to bury their child? Is that his
That's
line?
absolutely right. And most people do not know this. Almost no one knows this, but the choir in that scene is singing in Old English, and they sing a line. It's from a whole poem that didn't make it into the film, but they sing a line in Old English. Hererde his knappa of kiel tomen that he his det getsil that herde soth, which is the whole poem is about how Theoden raised his son, taught him to ride a horse, to use a sword, and then that line was just he raised his son from childhood so that he might face his death like a man, that hard truth. And I'm like, oh, and no one knows that that's what the lyrics are saying. No one knows it's Old English. And then, of course, Gandalf says, Westu hall Theodred, or Fairthu Theodred Fairthu, which means like, be thou well, go forth, Theodred. And it's just the depth of culture that they put into moments like this are so lovely. And this part is all a practical set as well, because I told you they built the gates, and so they built the mounds, the king's mounds on either side of the road that comes out as well.
Yeah. Well, as we talked about Helm's Deep fairly extensively already,
hit us with it.
I'm going to pick a different shot for my, as opposed to the Helm's Deep sort of battle established. This is one of my other favourite shots as well. And there's a few versions of this. You've got the one where Saruman comes out the tower just before Wormtongue says, "But my lord, there is no such army." And we go out and we've got the big reveal of the army. I really like this shot as well. This is just after Isengard has been flooded by the breaking of the dam. And, you know, the fires of Isengard have been put out. The trees taking their revenge. Great shot. And there's a duplicate shot of this as well, where, you know, everything's fully functional and before the place gets attacked. But, yeah, it's so all the ones involving Isengard are really, really effective. There's another, let me get the other one that I was thinking of, which I had a moment ago, but now, of course, the page has gone wonky due to my slow internet connection, clearly. No, it's down here, just coming up here. This is also a very good one with the eye and seeing the distance between the eye and Mordor. But yeah, this is the other shot I was talking about, which is here. This is a great one. And again, that's, of course, actors against blue screen and whatever, but so effective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you believe it, you buy into it. You're not sitting there thinking about the effects so much.
No, you just don't question it. The wind looks so good on both Christopher Lee and Brad Dourif. Just looks amazing. Yeah. And you get the sense that, you know, the wind is not just regular wind. It's almost coming from this massive army of horror that he's created.
Yeah, so I mean, your spot for choice in this category for kind of, you know, established shots. There's a lot of them in the Two Towers. There's some great ones. There's a great one of we do see Minas Tirith, I think, even in the Two Towers briefly. Don't we see Gandalf riding towards it?
We see Gandalf riding towards Minas Tirith in the first film in Fellowship.
Oh right, okay. Not with Merry when he leaves Edoras.
That's we see Gandalf riding with Pippin in the third film.
Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes,
we're on to that's next week. We're on to category 5, which is our favourite prop from the film, but not a weapon, because we've got weapon as a separate category. So any prop from the movie, except for a weapon. Anna, I'll let you go first on this.
No, hit me with yours first.
No, you're going to go first. I'm trying to find the picture of mine. So let me look for
that. Well, you'll not be surprised by this, but I absolutely love all of the saddles that they made for the film. Actually, that photo that you scraped for the intro of your Tuesday stream that has me on a horse, The
Oh yeah.
reason I like normally I take pictures of like my horses with me not on them or like between the ears because I'm riding. But the reason there's a picture of me on the horse is because we were testing out. I made one of those saddles, or rather a saddle cover that fits over my jumping saddle. I absolutely love the saddles that they've made for the films, and the idea was so they hired again a New Zealander, a saddler named Tim Ebert, and the idea was that he would come on to do 25 hero saddles and bridles. And of course, with everything else, the scale of the production just balloons and it got so huge. And he ended up making 40 hero saddles, so proper saddles with trees and everything. And then he made like 250 saddle covers that could fit over the saddles that people already had, because saddles are made to fit, they're fitted to specific horses and to riders. And so a lot of people were coming with their own horses and their own saddles. And so I you can't see it too well, but the saddle that both Aragorn and Legolas have in the scene is the type that I made, which was one that Tim instructed the folks at Weta, and then they were able to produce a lot of these saddle covers and these bridles. And there's just a huge amount of work put into all of the horse work because they knew it was going to be really important. But like the horses all have these chamfrons, these face plates on, and they look like leather. They knew that it would be a problem if these horses are wearing them every single day because leather will irritate bridles and things are made out of leather, but a piece of leather that's this stiff would irritate a horse's face. So they made all of them in leather, and then they cast them and remolded them in urethane, which is quite soft and flexible, doesn't irritate a horse's face, and is easier to fit so that they could put them on horses of every size who were coming in. I could tell you a lot about what horses they were trying to get, because again, I have some friends who worked as riders, but everything, of course, made by scratch, because the aesthetic of the Rohirrim had not been done before, and so they needed everything to fit into the design motifs that they had chosen for this culture. And they had horse makeup on all of the horses too. They had experts to apply mud and sweat to the saddles to make it look like they had been ridden in for a long, long time, even though they hadn't necessarily, so that nothing would look too clean. Uraeus, who plays Brago, the horse that rescues Aragorn in this film, he has 2 white back feet. And in real life, Uraeus has now passed away. He passed away in 2019. But in real life, this horse actually has 3 white socks on his legs. But for whatever reason, they decided that would be a little distracting in film. And so they blacked out one of the white socks on his front leg. Although there are a few shots where they forgot to do that and you can still see it. But the fact that they had horse makeup artists and horse dirt and sweat experts, so people show up and you've brushed your horse, you've groomed your horse because you don't want to leave your horse dirty, and people will show up with their nice clean horse, and then they're like, all right, we're going to put some makeup on your horse so it looks like you've been riding on this horse for 2 weeks straight without breaks. It's just amazing attention to detail that they did with all of this. And so sorry, I guess that wasn't a single prop, but just the saddles and the horse that they did.
That's a perfectly acceptable.
Just incredible work all the way through.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfectly acceptable choice. I had a couple of different ones that I considered. One was the Palantir. I quite like that. Obviously, it's basically an orb which is spruced up with special effects. So I kind of didn't consider it a physical prop in its entirety.
They did try to make a practical Palantir. It didn't work, but they made a real effort at it.
Yeah. Well, do you know what was the story behind that? Did they put like a lighting source inside the globe or something? Or
I don't know how they tried. Ultimately, of course, they do. Well, I mean, the Palantir itself is an actual orb that they've made so that you can handle it, but all of the images inside are CG whenever it's showing you something. I don't know how they tried to make it practical, actually. That would have been really neat.
Yeah, I'm sure that we probably would have had them for sale. But anyway, so I looked at that ultimately I thought, no, it's a bit there are more interesting things. One of the things I really like in the trilogy is things like coats of arms and emblems, of which there's quite a few when you look, and I really like this particular item, which is going to be my choice. I had it, now I've lost it. Let me find it. Oh, there it is. So just grab that quickly. So this is
excellent choice.
Yeah, the flag that, unless I'm mistaken, isn't it? It's the White Tree of Gondor, isn't it? And represents the forces of Minas Tirith.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and this is the white banner, just for context for chat, that Boromir unfurls once they've retaken Osgiliath in an extended scene in the second film.
Yeah, and so it's only in the extended edition, and he kind of plants it at the top of the tower, and we reclaim this city in the name of Gondor and all that kind of thing, which is a great sequence, and it's a shame that sequence was cut from the original release, but of course we have it now. Yeah, I like it. I mean, I like the way this is the banner that's been carried into war as well. I mean, it actually looks like it's been peppered with machine gun bullets, which maybe is, but it just looks like it's been taken into war. It's knackered, it's dirty, but it's what he's got to plant the flag for victory in that sequence, and it's a great sequence. I really do enjoy that sequence. It sets up so much as well, because you have the steward. Where is my firstborn? Where is my favorite son? And you can tell
the best scenes that wasn't extended only. It should have been in the original cut.
It really should, because it sets up a lot, and I think it's good to be introduced to that character outside of the throne room as well, and also sets up his love for Boromir, so that stuff in Return of the King has more power when you see it, But yeah, so I think that's probably mine. There were a few other things I looked at, but I was tempted to go for Gandalf's staff, which I really like, his new staff. But I think technically that really is classed as a weapon, because he does use it as a weapon.
No, it's not. It's not a weapon at all. You wouldn't part an old man from his walking stick.
His walking stick, would you? I love the look Ian McKellen does just after that line.
A little wink.
It's great. Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to category 6. I think we're on. And
now we can talk about the weapons.
Now we can talk about weapons. Indeed. Did you want to go first?
Sure. Mine's just a real small one. All of the weapons are excellent, but I quite like. Well, all of the Uruk weapons that we see at Helm's Deep, but I quite like the orc crossbows, the handheld ones, not the huge spearcasters that they've got. The handheld ones, they actually fire, although, they didn't have, weapon bolts in them. And they're based on a 15th century German artillery design. And so they actually are functional, like, crossbows. And that was just a little thing that John Howe wanted to put in for the Uruks, because he really likes medieval weaponry, and he really liked the design of these German crossbows. But the idea behind it, of course, because all of this stuff has meaning, is that the Uruks and the machination of Saruman, this is all the brainchild of Saruman, and Saruman is is a wizard who's turned to wheels and to industry and to mechanization. And the idea was almost that Saruman is obsessed by chicanery and all of these ideas of things that are no longer traditional. They're not traditional bows, they're crossbows that have all of these moving parts that fascinates him somehow. And so the idea was almost Saruman may have been the one to have dreamed up these crossbows, and then of course he's armed this army that he's bred with this new type of weapon. And one aspect of the Battle of Helm's Deep is that the people of Rohan are completely unprepared for what they're facing with the Uruks, not just in sheer numbers, but in the terms of technology that they've gotten. Of course, the one that stands out is the device of Sauron's being gunpowder, or some equivalent thereof that he's developed, and he's able to, cause explosions on a scale that the people of Rohan have never seen before. But everything else, from the types of ladders that they've got, including the really big ladders, the huge keep scaling ones, and the crossbows that they've got, just all of this is so far beyond what the world of men is ready for, and just that they really haven't got a hope unless there's some sort of intervention that verges on the divine. Anyway, I love those crossbows.
Yeah, they've got those kind of little hooks at the front.
Yep.
So
and they had this whole problem with shooting. Sorry, just a little shooting anecdote, that the Elven army had all this trouble firing their bows because they were all college students, because that was who had time in the middle of the night, and who was really, really slender, so they could wear the elven armor. And of course, all of the Uruks are like these really big, tough stuntmen. And so the elves were having all of this trouble firing in unison and firing straight. So the Uruks would just jeer at them and would wave their crossbows. And it's kind of spurred all of the elven extras on to a feeling of rage, and that allowed them to focus and actually produce good footage.
Right. That's interesting. And also quite funny. Yeah, I do remember when the elves arrive, and there's a shot of, I guess, what you would call your key foreground unit. That's probably about somewhere between 10 and 20 extras, and they're all young and gorgeous looking, and you can't tell, they've really gone for androgynous in that key unit. So you can't quite tell which ones are men and which ones are women. They've got this androgynous look.
That's how Arwen would have been able to slip in, in the original draft of the original cut of the film that has Arwen fighting at Helm's Deep.
Yes, indeed. I'm kind of glad they didn't do that, though, because she's not.
I'm very glad as well.
Uninspired reviewer, thank you for $2, buddy. Appreciate that. Great friend of mine, another YouTuber. He's just popping in very briefly. Yeah, good pick.
Hit me with your weapon. Not literally.
Well, funnily enough, it's also one of the Orc devices, and I thought there would be a shot of it here, but I can't find one. I like the ballistas with the grappling hooks on that they fire up into the tower, and then they use them to then winch up those massive ladders. And of course, we talked about it earlier, where one guy takes one of those straight into the stomach, which I remember drew a huge gasp in the cinema, because you kind of weren't expecting that. You could feel the pain as well. If you got hit by one of those, that's just, you're gone. And also a particularly grisly way to go, and he gets kind of like pinned against the wall.
That's the poor lad who broke his leg.
Yeah, and I really like the way the same way you're talking about it. It's like all these different devices that have been designed by Saruman. We've got a good shot of the battle here, but not specifically of one of those things. But yeah, I really like that, and it's the way that they work with this is all working in tandem with these huge ladders that then are designed to, bring like a battalion of orcs up. And that's really kind of how the Hornburg part of the fortress is. That's when they're done in. Really, they've got to retreat. The
sound design for the ballistas is so good. It punches as they fire, and then they'll smack the wall, and they'll come back and make that clink. And also just the sound, because of course the ladders have these sort of, I think they're just repurposed cutlasses, essentially, these big machetes with a spike on the end. But the way they clink down each time a ladder hits the wall, it just satisfies the brain in a way.
It's similar to the siege towers that have got, like, as Peter Jackson described it, he wanted them to be like the landing craft in World War II, where they, the drawbridge comes down onto the side of the wall and all the orcs come pouring out. And then of course he did have actual landing craft in the Two Towers as well, when they Osgiliath. Is that in Two Towers, or is that Return? No, it's Return of the King.
That's Return of the King, but in a way,
I'm getting them mixed up.
Reversed the D-Day landing. The good guys are the ones waiting for the craft to arrive.
That's right. Yeah. Scimitar.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it
the word.
all blurs into one movie for me. It's hard to remember where one begins and the other ends. But that'd be my pick. I was tempted to go for Gandalf's staff, which I do really like, because it's very particular in its design. There's loads of shots of it. So grabbing one of them wouldn't be too much of a challenge. It just depends how fast my computer's feeling. But it's not as interesting. I mean, it's a cool groovy staff with quite a nice ornate design there.
It's got the reason it has the Celtic design on it. I quite like it. That was something they chose for, of course, the Istari. The wizards are something quite different from anything else. And how do you design Gandalf? How do you design Saruman? But the idea behind it was that this is almost a Celtic motif as well, but something rather different than Celtic motifs that we see, well, Anglo-Saxon motifs that we see in the swirling designs of the Rohirrim. And it's, it does stand out. It is quite different. That was actually the reason why when Saruman dies, sorry, third film, but he's killed 3 times. He's shot once with an arrow, or he's stabbed, then he falls, and then he's impaled on the spike, and then Grima is shot with the arrow.
Right, yeah.
And that was all a reference to sort of this Celtic notion of wizards needing 3 deaths to truly die. And that was just something that John Howe thought was really neat and put in the design process.
Yeah. And of course, Saruman's death actually occurs much later.
Yes.
At the end of Return of the King.
Yeah, it gets shanked in the Shire.
Yeah, they return home and to find that the Shire has in fact been scourged by Saruman and what's left of his army. I didn't like that in the book, actually. I have to say, I found it all very anticlimactic. It was like, oh, okay, and then also the way his death happens, and I also just didn't believe this small bunch of hobbits could take out all his guys, not backed up by Rohirrim.
Hey, the Battle of Bywater is legendary.
Okay, well, yeah, it's good, but I don't know.
Those hobbit archers, they really pulled through.
They did, yeah. But, it's just as well they had all that training, huh? So, all right, we'll move on. We'll move on from that. Our next category is it favorite cultural item?
I think so.
So we're going to pick something that's unique to the culture of the Two Towers, something that's been created for the film to reinforce one culture or other in the piece. I mean, it's for me, it's really got to be stuff to do with the Rohirrim. But which thing? I mean, there's so many things I could pick from, the top corners of the houses in Edoras to the tables to the stables. It's quite hard to pick one specific thing because I'm just trying to think of one that really stands out because it all blends so nicely. I mean, even the even their weapons and everything from the costumes for the soldiers, to the costumes to the civilians, all of that stuff reeks of Rohan. You smell of horse, literally reeks of Rohan. But I will pick something. Let's get a picture of it. One of the things I like, which you don't notice it too much because of the way it's shot, which is all from one angle in the film. But I do like Theoden's throne. And the 2 armrests are basically horse heads. And then you've got these various kind of sigil things and stuff on the sides. And there's a huge amount of detail in it. You kind of have to watch the movie and sort of pause, like when he stands up and you get a good view of it. But and again, you've got those lovely banners in the background as well. I mean, it's a bit like why I picked a flag earlier. All of this stuff is wonderful, wonderful detail. So yeah, I mean, just in general terms, all of the stuff for the culture of Rohan, I absolutely love. I'll pick the throne as my actual item. Yeah, so that'd be my.
That's
my
a
choice.
great choice.
What's yours?
And you know, I love that throne room, and you know, I've replicated because I showed you I've replicated a whole bunch of those banners in the back. I've done
Yeah.
all but one of Theoden's throne room, and most because you can't buy decent banners, you can't buy flags of good quality that are double sided that you can use on horseback. Not that the throne room ones need to be horseback, but I've replicated a lot of those because I like to make stuff in my free time. I'm pretty good at sewing.
You got a rider. I know you horse ride and you've got horses. Have you got a Rider of Rohan's secret costume that you wear occasionally when you go out horse riding?
I don't. I swear.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might have been a lie. I'm sure your nose got a bit bigger when you said that. What's your choice?
But I'll pick something actually quite different. Just because we've talked so much about the Rohan culture, because it's so wonderful, I'm going to give a little bit of love to the Ithilien Rangers, because I love the design aesthetic that's given to them. That they are, of course, they're tied to, you know, the sort of the very grandiose but also clean, almost Byzantine inspired lines that we see from Minas Tirith and from the culture of Gondor overall. And so you can definitely see the connection. However, Nyla Dixon, who's the costumer, wanted there to be a through line between the Ithilien Rangers and the costume of Aragorn. The idea that these are men who live out in the wild, who work in the forests, who are wearing greens and browns, and of course they've still got, you know, the silver tree of Gondor on their chest and the leathers that they're wearing. And they actually had a huge dye press, a huge tree of Gondor dye press, so that they could stencil in the tree of Gondor to have slight bit of relief that they would then put the silver paint in, and it looks quite good. Many people absolutely adore the Ithilien Ranger look because it's I think it's one of the more popular looks for people who do Lord of the Rings LARP or cosplay, because there's a lot of those pieces can be repurposed into something else, and you can also really customize and individualize a look if you're doing Ithilien Ranger as a costume. But you still see the connection between that and the very beautiful silver armor that everyone is wearing in Minas Tirith. But at the same time, you get the sense that Faramir, he is a little more, I suppose you could say, not rough and tumble, like guerrilla warfare compared to some of the, you know, the head-on charges that you might see from people in the shiny silver armor who have no need to use bows or to hide in the trees. And you also get the sense that he is a younger son. That was something they were trying to have come through in the costume. Of course, Faramir is a very competent and a very knowledgeable man, but he's always sort of in the shadow of his brother, at least in the eyes of his father. And much like the line of Denethor is, they're of the house of Anarion, who was the younger brother of Isildur, and so they were the stewards, whereas the line of Isildur was the line of kings. And they were, once again, sort of always in the shadow of that. And so it's slightly lesser in a way, but in a way I think that looks absolutely fantastic. And this was all of the elements that were going into his design, while also trying to make something that was extremely practical and beautiful for David Wenham to wear. And I think they really nailed it with these designs. So many people gravitate towards the Ithilien Rangers, and for good reason. Anyway, that's more, I'm not focusing on it as the costuming aspect, but more as like the cultural element and how it ties into the broader notions of the culture of Gondor.
No, I think it's a good choice, and for exactly those reasons. I like it. That's a good one. The scenes with the Rangers are really good. I mean, I do like the ambush of the Haradrim with the Sam's line. Look, Mr. Frodo, an elephant. This is sort of and it doesn't quite say Oliphant, which I think is the way they're spelled. And he pronounces it his own sort of unique way.
He is American. Did you know, by the way, that Coney prop was a practical prop? There's this most people haven't seen it. There's this amazing behind the scenes footage of Peter Jackson biting because they had a rubber piece that would be the flesh of the rabbit that they could pull out. And of course, Gollum is CGI, but Andy Serkis actually, bit that rabbit and pulled out that rubber piece. Like, Arr. And there's this lovely shot of Peter Jackson holding that rabbit and pulling out that rubber bit that they'd made for the actor to bite.
I haven't seen that behind the scenes bit.
I have it saved somewhere. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, do please. This is the first time we see these guys in the Two Towers, and of course, anybody that's read the books kind of knows. Oh, okay, that's how they're going to do these in Return of the King. So you know, and we're going to talk more about those next week. Will either be on Sunday or Monday, depending on what kind of weekend I have. But I think there's a good chance we'll be at the same time on Sunday.
If it has to be Monday, no worries.
Yeah, I know you're very considerate, adapting as required. But I love the very unique look of these guys as well. Just talking about cultural things, straight away you know that this is an army from a different part of the country, and I've talked about this on several other streams, including Open Bar. When we were doing a Rings of Power episode, I called Will and said, I've really got to be on. I've got to be on. I want to talk about Rings of Power. And I had a great idea for a Lord of the Rings spin-off show, which could have been really, really interesting because they were looking to kind of do, Game of Thrones has been really successful, so we're going to do TV series of Lord of the Rings. Okay. And you've got this great little speech from Faramir where they've killed a young man who's, I think he's either fallen off one of the elephants or whatever, and he looks down at the body of this dead guy that he's killed, who's probably about 18 years of age, and he's got that wonderful line where he says, "I wonder where he's come from, who his parents were, why he chose to fight here, and all that kind of thing." And the way I would have
threats took him on this long march from home. Would he not rather have stayed there in peace?
Yeah, I would have started the TV show with that scene, and then I would have flashed back to like 10 years earlier and showed that same. It would be a different actor, but it would be the same person who got killed, and it would show the story of that country and how Sauron basically poisoned the mind of, or tricked the various leaders that ran this country and the other southern countries into declaring war on Gondor and so on. Mm-hmm. So it would be a Lord of the Rings series told from the point of view of the other countries that fought for Sauron and how they ended up on the side of the bad guys. And I think that would be really interesting to explore, and what's the fallout on those countries after this battle, after the battle in Return of the King. And I just think that's a great starting point. Tell the story of that kid that got killed, the story that Faramir is asking himself. This is someone who's younger than me. He's come into a country that's not his own. He's died. Why? Which is a question that is often asked of many wars. And I think that would be a great premise for a Lord of the Rings TV show, because it allows you to explore the other cultures, and also is great from a kind of modern point of view in terms of multiracial casting, because you're going to be looking to cast people that fit those looks from the original trilogy. And then you can do all this kind of, political court intrigue, because that's how it would start. It would be more of your first season of it would be, the various rulers that run these countries, meeting up for a meeting, and one of them is already in league with Sauron, and he's got to try and trick the other countries or trick his king into joining the war, whatever. And maybe that kid that gets killed is the prince or a cousin of somebody, but he's keen to be a hero, and that's what happens to him. And then the show would end. It would come full circle, and it would end with that scene. Well, that would be the end of the first season. So, I'm full of good ideas, mate.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's the beauty of the cultural design. It's so rich and so deep that you never question for an instant that Farhad isn't a real country and that these people actually came from there. You get to wondering, what are their stories, what are they doing here, because the design has you buying in so completely that these are fully fleshed out cultures that have got a lot of thought behind them. You want to know the stories.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Well, we're on to our 8th and final category. Favorite makeup element in the Two Towers. Now, this was an easy one for me. And for the benefit of people watching, I can't really let somebody choose Gollum for this category, because Gollum is basically a CGI character. So if we were talking about special effects, which we're not, we're talking about art and production design, although, yes, he's a creature that's been designed, sure. I'm going to rule him out of this category. This is mine anyway. This is one of the choices that was an easy one for me. I absolutely love the makeup, but I mean, I like the makeup for Wormtongue, but I like the makeup for the Poisoned King, Theoden. He's so weak, and they've given him these milky contact lenses and everything. And then when Saruman arrives and he draws the poison out of him, and you have that change, which again, there's a bit of CG in there, but it's basically two different makeup states with CG.
It's not CG. Well, other than the blending, it is 4 stages of makeup, and they just had Bernard Hill. You know how he's kind of gasping and moving his head? They had him do that exact movement 4 times and then overlaid them.
Isn't there a bit of CG for the blending?
Well, just for the blending. With the overlaying, but there's no alteration to the makeup other than going from one stage to the next.
Yeah, so I absolutely love this sequence, and when it changes and his makeup, fantastic stuff. Who was the chief makeup artist on Lord?
I think Gino Acevedo was the guy who did a lot of the makeup and design, but there were quite a lot of makeup artists, and the original concepts would have come from even higher than that. I'm not sure on that. I know in the case of the Theoden makeup, rather than having it be prosthetics, they were using a technique where you stretch the skin and then you apply thin layers of latex. And once the skin is not being stretched by hand, then it creates this sort of this wrinkled and flaky look, almost that he's so elderly that his skin has gone this powdery texture, and he's starting to fall apart. And of course they've given him really sunken and red eyes, and they've given him the nose is prosthetic, and then he's got the long eyebrows. But I think it was really interesting because it was he still needed to be able to act quite a bit in the scene, especially during the confrontation between Saruman and Gandalf, and they didn't want prosthetics that would really hinder what he was doing. So using the latex, and then they stippled it on, using the stretching and stippling technique has a really wonderful effect, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very, very effective. This was a great, when he's doing this particular face, I thought was a really great shot. And it's also, what's interesting about this face is the way Bernard Hill imitates Christopher Lee in this shot. Love that.
Such a talented actor, the both of them.
Yeah. And I know a few people that work with him actually, and he could be a bit moody at times. I didn't hear any bad stories or anything like that, but not a man to be trifled with on set. I do know. I know that story. He talks about it on the special editions where he made that decision when they did the first shot of the Battle of Helm's Deep, and he's waiting. He said, "Oh yeah, it'll look cool if I put my leg up on the parapet." Then he didn't realise he was going to have his leg up on that parapet for about 5 days while they did all the other shots, and and he said that was a bad decision because his leg got really stiff because he couldn't move it. But yeah, great sequence, fantastic job with the makeup. My compliments to the whole team. Anna and I are actually elves. It's not a widely known fact, but we are actually elves. That's why we don't age, you see. It's why we both look so young and gorgeous all the time.
Who, if you could be, okay, either if you could be in Lord of the Rings, or if, let's say this, if you could be an extra in Lord of the Rings, where would you want to be? What kind of extra would you want to be?
That's a really, really good question. I'd probably be a horse rider in the Battle of Minas Tirith, doing the big charge, which we're going to talk about next week, of course.
That's a good one.
There's the famous shot of the stunt person who fell off their horse and they kept it in, and kind of also CG'd and replicated that shot and stuck it in a couple of other places as well.
They've also got they had intentional ones where stunt riders fell off as well.
I know
they have intentional falls.
That one wasn't intentional. You could see how dangerous it was. They nearly got trampled. They were so lucky.
Yeah, his saddle slips all the way. I've had that happen to me before while going at a gallop. Luckily, only when I was a teenager, so I was young and bounceable. But I've come off horses before because I didn't tighten the cinch enough, and I get the horse galloping, and they're stretching out, and they're breathing, and the cinch gets loose, and your whole saddle shifts and goes right underneath the horse, and you just come off. And luckily, that only happened to me a couple times, and that was when I was a teenager. So I just kind of bounced to a stop and popped right back up. Probably now I'd break a load of bones.
Oh God! Well, I hope you don't ever get thrown from your saddle. That would be.
I've been thrown a lot of times.
Well, just always try and do a belly landing. So, what's your pick on the makeup front?
Mine would be. Oh my gosh!
I'll find you a picture.
I mentioned it last time. I quite like, again, the really subtle prosthetics that they've put on Brad Dourif. Just if you pull up that last one you had of
I'll get a better one of him.
But he's a human character, so he doesn't need any special ear tips or anything like that. But they, and everyone knows that Brad Dourif shaved his eyebrows for that. But they've made him really pallid, and then they've put this gelatin nose tip on top to make his nose just slightly longer, but only at the tip. And they've put some moles in, and just the really subtle facial prosthetics for things like that, because his nose doesn't quite look that way. I don't know how people look at an actor's face and design makeups, design prosthetics, and say, oh, this is going to make him look, that much slimier and that much creepier. And it just works really, really well. I love the makeup for that. And just, you can feel his presence oozing around all of Mediceld, all of the all over the city, wherever he is. And they've just done an excellent job with this really subtle work. One other thing I just quite like that you can pay attention to for the 3 films, it's really quite subtle, but Richard Taylor, who's the director of Weta, was saying one of his ideas for the Uruk-hai especially was that the Uruk-hai have gradually blotchier skin as you go through all 3 films. And so that's actually something you can see in this second film. Although it's quite subtle, is that the Uruk-hai who have kidnapped Merry and Pippin and are running with them to Isengard, their skin is supposed to get gradually blotchier, their hair gets grayer, they get more cataracts in their eyes, because the idea is that the Uruk-hai have something of an accelerated aging as the alchemy of their unholy creation is starting to fail. And it's not ever something that has attention drawn to it, but you can really see that in the Uruk-hai if you look closely at their makeup. And it's quite just, really, again, the amount of thought is really cool, because these are supposed to be something even more so than orcs, which are already in, Tolkien's a little unclear about what exactly the orcs are and how they came to be. But the idea is that the Uruk-hai are even more unnatural in their creation. They really were made and bred by Saruman, and he views them as disposable. And so that was rendered in the gradual makeup that they did. And of course, that, like everything else they do, that makes a nightmare for continuity, because you might have Uruk-hai footage from one place, and you can't just easily plop it in another place because, the makeup's slightly different. But the amount of planning that would go into what are the stages of makeup, just like with, the Hobbit actors, what are the stages of dirt and what kinds of packs have they got? Do they have their elf cloaks or not? At what point in their journey are they? Which of, 110 stages. It was something more like 40 stages, but which of like 35 to 40 stages along their journey are they? It makes it hard to switch around footage, but it means you have to plan everything out really, really well. And I just think they've done a brilliant job with that.
Yeah, and I mean, also, you don't get many close-ups prior to them going over the wall of them under the rain towers, and you've got to think, wow, when you do, like, say for example, this shot, this would have been, I don't know how many takes they would have had at this, but I know that everybody would be saying, get it in the first one, because that makeup's not staying on very long under a rain tower. I can guarantee you that.
No, they had pretty waterproof makeup because facial prosthetics have a shelf life of, they're often just 1 to 2 days, but the full body Uruk suits could last a week, even in the rain. And so and then eventually they'd have to throw them out and grind them up and everything. But you could pull those suits back on, and they painted them such that everything stayed on decently well for the night shoot. But it must have been so utterly miserable. And probably, so this was another cut sequence. They never filmed this, but they had originally planned to have an Uruk or a warg attack on Edoras. And so there would have been Uruks and orcs riding those wargs, and they would have, attacked Edoras by night. The plan was they were going to set several things on fire, and there was going to be a sequence where Aragorn gets dragged out of the burning royal stables by Brago and gets dragged out into the middle of the plains of Rohan, and that's why he's thought to be dead and is separated from, Theoden and his people, and that's he's able.
Is that from the book?
No, it's not from the book either. It was just an original plan that they had, and that would not have been in the rain. But they decided to replace it with the warg attack by day, which is a brilliant scene as well. And actually, Philippa Boyens repurposed a lot of that for the War of the Rohirrim film. If that sounds familiar, it's because it was a plot point in one of the early drafts of the script that they had, repurposed for better or worse into another film. But I think the way that they've...
Did you see the War of the Rohirrim film?
I did. Yeah, of course I did.
I haven't seen it. What did you think of it?
It could have been a lot better than it was. There was stuff that I appreciated about it. Yamamoto Kenji was the director of it, a Japanese guy, and I actually got to see it because it came out like December 17th or something of 2023, and I was in Japan at the time. I came back a few days later, and so I actually got to see it in Japanese first. And a voice actor who is quite well known in Japan, who I think is a really great voice, was voicing Wolf, the main sort of villain. So I liked it for some of the aspects of that, and I always like to see more Rohan culture. I didn't think the story was particularly strong, and when I saw it in English, there were quite a few lines that were repurposed, not even from the books, but from Jackson's films, that were repurposed in ways that just reminded you of how much better those films were, and how this was either misapplying or doing it a lot more. It was a lot weaker. So anyway, there's good and bad. I'd say more bad than good, but I like everything to do with the culture of Rohan, so I did appreciate it on that front. Anyway, sorry, I've strayed so far from the makeup.
No, that's fine. I mean, I never saw it, this movie, and I think
it's probably not worth it. But I did find it interesting because I knew about this plot point that had been in early drafts of the script and then was reworked into having a warg attack by day and then the Uruk attack on the Hornburg by night. And I think that works way better than having an attack on Edoras at night. But I was getting weird deja vu watching it be fitted into this film. Yeah. I mean, Oliphant's attack as well for the spectacle of it.
I'm totally up for a animated Lord of the Rings. Strong female characters are all good, but it did seem like a lot of the narrative was a bit forced and didn't sort of seem to fit with what we knew of Middle Earth and how it worked. And I don't know how you felt about that because you're a much bigger expert on it than me.
I don't need to get into anything that's spoilers, and again, because you haven't seen it, but I felt there is nothing wrong with strong female characters, and people absolutely love Eowyn. Miranda Otto is actually the English narrator for this film, but I felt that this character, among some other flaws, she never has to make any real sacrifice of her own. And people around her people around her sacrifice and die in a way that makes everything work out for her in the end, in a way that felt really cynical, and that frustrated me quite a lot. I went out and ranted to some friends after seeing it, and they had a lot of the same thoughts as me. And we were all ladies. We were all, and Lord of the Rings fans. We were all the target audience, and this strong female warrior didn't land with us in probably the way that they hoped.
And it's your fault because you're toxic.
Yes, I know.
You don't
like I want to see female characters have hardship, suffering, and growth. Remember character growth? I want to see them change throughout the film. So I would say some other characters might have a semblance of an arc. That one, Hera, has something of a straight line.
I mean, it
is what it is.
It's a big problem in the last Star Wars trilogy with the character of Rey. We don't. There's nothing in the film that tells us why is she so good with a lightsaber from the get-go. And we think we're going to find out something about her past that justifies that. Ultimately, she turns out to be a child of the Emperor, which makes no sense whatsoever. She goes into that funny cave to look into her past, but she doesn't find anything. All of that stuff was just really naff. And I just think she's one of the weakest written lead characters in a story. And you're right, she doesn't go through enough, That's
writers need to remember and understand that female characters can be as strong and weak and silly and smart and good and evil as male characters, and seeing the full range, not showing the full range of human possibility through, and I mean like an emotional sense, through female characters, saying that they always have to be represented in a particularly positive or strong light, really diminishes women quite a lot. They can't be humans. They can't be real in the same way that a lot of male characters can be. And then when people keep resonating more with the more realistic and the more fleshed out male characters who are having more flaws and more struggles, then they're like, oh my goodness. Women want to see characters, male and female, that have flaws, that have struggles, and that have arcs.
Yeah.
Anyway. I never even saw Rise of Skywalker in English. I've only ever seen it in Japanese. And I appreciated because they did.
I bet it was a better film. It was probably a better film in Japanese.
It probably was. They did shoot a part of it in Petra, which I mentioned before. I excavated there. So I was really happy to see Wadi Rum and Petra show up in the film. And that was about it. The rest of the time I was like, But yeah, I've never seen it in English. I only learned like all of the memes, like I am all of the Jedi, or they fly now. I learned that from memes later on.
We have a super chat. Darth Plato for $5,000. Wait, let me put my glasses on. Oh, $5. Women have always been part of war, willing or not. Women disguising as men to see the action was more common than we may think. Mother Ross, for instance. Do you know who Mother Ross was, Anna?
I don't.
No, okay. A quick search of Google will no doubt give us the answer.
But yeah, that's a great point. And no matter what the proportion was in combat roles, women would always be participating in and affected by wars, participating in supply lines, creating, preparing things. There would be quite a lot of sacrifice and work, and there would be quite a few women, at most pre-modern military camps as well, to cook and to set things up and to care for horses and men and do give medical attention. And so women are always involved in the same way. But I think it is some understanding of the realities of what women would face in what the average woman would face in physical combat against the average man. Some of Hollywood's able to recognize that and, incorporate it realistically. And then sometimes it's just like, it's getting a little boring. That's my hot take for the day. I'm getting real spicy.
No, that's all right. I just Googled Mother Ross. So Mother Ross was, in fact, Christian Davies, born 1667, died 1739, was an Irish woman who joined the English army in 1693, disguised as a man. I mean, this is just begging to have a film made of it, begging. She fought with the infantry in Flanders during the 9 Years' War until 1697, then with the Scottish Army in the 4th Dragoons, then later 2nd Royal North British Dragoons, and finally with the Scots Greys in the War of the Spanish Succession. The author Daniel Defoe met her in old age when she was a Chelsea pensioner and turned her story into a book entitled The Life and Adventures of Mrs. Christian Davies. There you go.
Wow.
So, yeah.
This is crying out for an adaptation.
I've just scrolled to the bottom of the page, and it's amazing that there's no section in media. You would have thought there would have been a little documentary. She married 3 times as well, which back then is, quite unheard of. I mean, people would remarry usually when the partner died. They would remarry, but for a woman to remarry 3 times is quite, that's fairly uncommon, I would say. Clearly, this is a favourite topic of Darth Plato's. He's got all kinds of information here.
Well, and, excellent historical poll, really.
Yeah, Davies was her a married name. Okay, yeah. That's interesting. Her birth name was actually Christian Kavanagh, according to this. So I don't know if her original name was Welch or not. Well, it depends if you believe everything you read on Wikipedia. Throughout her life, she would use the surnames Welsh or Welch, Ross, Jones, and Davies. So she had 5 pseudonyms, no less. Interesting. And her father served with the Jacobite army, dying as a result of wounds at the Battle of Aughrim. Her family was confiscated as a result for their support for the Jacobite cause. Tut tut. Fascinating. Oh, there we are. That brings us almost to the end of our stream about the art and production design in The Two Towers. It's a film just bursting with fantastic design aspects. Yeah, Dan Candy. Fascinating stuff. Anyway, back to The Two Towers. We say we try not to go down too many rabbit holes, but I mean, 1 or 2 are guaranteed. It wouldn't be a show.
It's unavoidable.
Well, we have to. It's expected. No, stay in my rabbit hole. I'm afraid we can't. General Woonwoods has moved into that rabbit hole, and we had to evacuate. So yeah, Two Towers. Yeah, what a great film. I mean, the Battle of the Helm's Deep sequence. There are many great sequences in this film. Really makes this movie, and you have all these great stakes, and then you have different turning points and stuff like that. It's just there was a really good side-by-side comparison done of this and the battle in the Lord of the Rings of Power. I don't even remember the name of the battle.
The Battle of Eregion. Yes.
There you go. Thanks. You can see how well this one has been thought through, just from the design aspect to people with military, backgrounds, what sort of machines would have been invented in order to attack this place and stuff like that.
Having more than 12 extras to portray the elven defenders. That's a start.
Indeed. Was there only 12 in Rings of Power? I wonder where all the money
It was a ridiculously small number of folks in Eregion who were guarding that wall, and you kept seeing the elven captain there coming to deal with random stuff. It's like, no, stay at your post. There's so few men already, and then a huge army of elves is shown arriving from Gil-galad's place, but from Linden, but then they're whittled down to about 12 as well. And just that's one battle where the lack of scale is so evident. And in the case of the Lord of the Rings, Battle of Helm's Deep, they're filming on much less of a budget, and yet they have managed to get people in suits, in armor, in costume, on set, who are willing to stand there in the rain and there wasn't even any rain for the Battle of Origion. Anyway, getting people in costumes filling your space, you don't need that many. And in this case, they'd have like 50 people, and they'd move them around and use them really, really strategically. But it really made it feel a lot more alive. And the Battle of Origion has all sorts of problems, but some of those problems would have been alleviated had they taken the time to actually have actual shots of extras close up, lots of extras used in a clever way to make it look like there's actually a lot of people, instead of just having these sweeping shots of massive CGI armies. And then when the camera closes in on real people, it's extremely sparse and thin. So
yeah, I remember. I mean, this is an important horsey thing. One of the things that really annoyed me about that battle sequence, I can't remember where it falls in the running order of nonsense, but the whole thing is nonsense, so it really doesn't matter. There's a bit where they charge with their horses, huge line, mostly CGI, but about 20 of them replicated again and again and again, and it's really noisy, and then suddenly they're able to bring the entire line of horses to a complete standstill at the same time.
There's no way.
Yeah, even in fantasy world where Elven Captain has a magic whistle or whatever that all horses can hear, it just doesn't. It's just not going to happen. They're not going to all stop in unison like that. They'd need about 20 feet to at least for the riders to sort of rear them up and say whoa, whoa, and all that kind of thing. And when that happened in the film, I just in the TV show, I just went, this is bollocks. And that was just one of many aspects of that whole sequence that was just dreadful. Maybe we should do a special stream to just talk about that battle sometime.
No, I don't want to rewatch it. Don't make me do that.
Don't make me rewatch it, please.
I can understand from that point of view. They had decided probably that they wanted to have that scene where for some reason the lighting is really, really bright on the Linden Elven side, and then it's quite dark on Adar's side. And so they wanted to have a scene that had that split right down the middle, and they were thinking of that shot, and then with Galadriel in a cage in the middle of it. And then they were like, so we have this shot in mind, and how can we arrange things to get to the point of this shot where the whole the armies are right next to each other, but we also want to have a charge, and it just didn't make sense in the lead up. And you go right to the source of it, and you're like, what is the meaning of this shot? Because it wasn't all that good a shot. It was extremely infantile, I might say, to be like, well, this side is really illuminated and this side's really shadowed. What are you trying to say? What is the meaning behind all of it, other than this side good, this side bad? But my guess is that they came up with the concept for that shot, and then they planned the entire scene and the charge around wanting to have that shot. But yeah, Darth Plato mentions horses tend to avoid sharp bits pointed at them. It's usually true. It's not always true. Horses will go and stab themselves on, T-posts in the pasture if they absolutely can. In the Helm's Deep sequence, when Eomer's people come down with Gandalf and they all jump into... Oh, I should have picked that. I should have picked that as one of my favorite shots. There's a shot as they're leaping into the line of Uruks, and there's one... when
the beam of light comes and it sort of blinds them.
Yes, and there's one of the Rohan warriors whose horse is leaping in, and he swings his sword downward and out.
I love that shot.
It's so exactly cool.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
But all of the spears that they were leaping into, first they had safety lanes so that horses weren't actually jumping on top of extras. They would have safety lanes that the horses would run through, and then the stunt doubles who could get hit by a horse if they needed to. But the hope was that they wouldn't. They were standing by the side, and from the point of view of the camera, the impression would be really, really strong that these two lines are running together. And then they had cardboard spears, just big cardboard tubes, so that if a horse ran into one of the spears, they would all be fine, because they did not want anyone getting poked by any pointy bits, even if it's not metal on the end. You don't want a horse running into a stick. So they were the most breakaway of breakaway props. And I should have picked that shot. I absolutely adore that shot.
I do love that shot. I don't think there's a still of it on IMDb, annoyingly, but yeah, it's and the music with that.
That one. They had a soloist, a young boy named Ben Del Maestro, who did the Old English texts. Who sang the Old English texts as they come down the hill, and they were singing. He was singing the text of a poem called The White Rider that was also written for the film and then translated into Old English, and which talks about the relationship between Gandalf and Shadowfax, actually, which I always thought was interesting for that particular scene. Ben Del Maestro, as a soloist, comes up a couple of other times, and one of the other really notable scenes is Return of the King, when Gandalf rides out to save the men who are fleeing Osgiliath from the three Nazgûl attacking them. And you know that beautiful solo? That's that boy soloist. And now, because he was quite young at the time, now he's he's younger than me even. So now he's in his late 20s or early 30s, and he works like at a factory somewhere in the UK. He just has a very normal life, as you know, most boy soloists can't keep their voices into adulthood. But for the few moments that we have him in The Lord of the Rings, just excellent job.
It's kind of bizarre that he works in a factory in the UK somewhere. We should, you know what? We should try and get a couple of people on for when we've done all three movies. I think it'd be good to get a couple of people on that, as you say, you've spoken to. There's so many people in New Zealand that worked on the film. It'd be great to get someone who, you know, played at Uruk, for example, and you know, and then maybe someone who was an elf extra or whatever. And talking, if you could get those two, and they both did the Helm's Deep shoot. That'd be a great industry interview, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, chat.
I don't know off the top of my head anyone personally who played either an elf or an Uruk, but like I mentioned, there's loads of people who worked on Rings, and especially through the magic of the internet, you can often get them to come on. There's been a recent trend I've noticed. Nyla Dixon has been in a lot of sort of YouTuber stream interviews. She did the costumes and so there's going to be people around who are always willing to chat about their experiences.
I'd absolutely love to get her on.
Everyone, if we could get her, but everyone is so enthusiastic and so positive about the film, and everyone is so grateful that, you know, 25 years on, this film is remembered so fondly. Positively. Is so important to so many people. That'd be delightful. Anyone who had, if you're watching this, you know, watching the VOD, and you had anything to do with the Lord of the Rings and you want to come on anytime,
reach out to the Outcast Creative. We'd love to have you on. I don't care if you just made the tea. Because one of the goals of my channel is actually to interview a crew member that covers every position on a set. So I'm trying to get a caterer to come on. It's so difficult because they're always working and they're always up early, and but you know, I'd love to interview a catering company and just talk through the logistics of, you know, how they approach it, and you know, and also runners and so on. So I have interviewed at probably about 20 different positions of crew on the channel thus far. This precedes that shot that we've been talking about. This is a big CG shot, I would imagine.
Yes, but with the model elements in the background, the one built in the quarry.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing. Quite a lot of people tagged in this shot. Must have been various people. Well, we would be very interested, so that would be good. That'd be good to talk to some people, see what we can do. I'll definitely reach out to that costume lady. So I'll tell you what, we'll have a chat about that when we get offline. So just talking about, I remember same thing as I said before, when this film finishes, which it does, with Frodo and Sam continuing their journey, and they have that little conversation, and Frodo he regains part of himself, and he has that sequence where he says, "But what about Sam? I want to hear the tales about Sam." And he kind of puts them both back on an even footing, which is it's like a nice friendship moment. And they're calling after Gollum. And then the shot, it pans up, and we kind of get a sense of where they are in terms of how much closer they've got. Because I think now they're coming towards the marshes. Is that right?
At this point, they have left the marshes behind and they've gone around. They're going to be approaching the stairs of Cirith Ungol.
That's
Will be
right.
the next big challenge they have
The
to face
sequence
next film.
when Frodo falls into the water and the hands
Oh, I see. Yeah.
reach out to him. That is that sequence that's in Two Towers, right?
Yes, that is Two Towers.
Just I always get confused with their narrative a little bit. You know, which where it falls.
Yeah, and that Dead Marshes shot, it's not. I mean, they had some overhead shots, but that one's not. That one's all a backlot set. Although they did import loads and loads of sphagnum moss to look like he was properly falling in, and
yeah, it was shot.
by
That was shot in a
real
car
swamp.
park.
Yeah, but that's the flooded car park. That later they flooded it again. It was their wet set, so they used it for Osgiliath, and they used it also for flooded Orthanc for the third film. It was a problem. It's actually such a problem. Sorry, little tangent. Whenever they had horses in it, like for the scene where they're talking with Saruman on top of his tower, they were in water all the time, and because they're standing in water, horses tend to poop more when they're standing in water. So the horses were pooping all the time, and the poor hobbit scale doubles had to walk around in it because Pippin hops off from behind Aragorn. And there's actually a shot as they're walking towards the tower where you can see that Eomer's horse is actively pooping, and it's made it into the film.
I vaguely remember catching a quick glimpse of a horse taking a dump.
That's the kind of detail you love to get, the verisimilitude.
Well, I mean, I don't know about love to get, but yeah, sure. Whatever you say. Yeah, I mean, this is nearer the beginning of the movie, this shot here, but just to contextualize what I'm talking about. So you have this shot that shows you, okay, there's Mount Doom in the distance. You can't even see it, but you can see the fire. And then when we cut to the shot at the end of the Two Towers, you can clearly see Mount Doom. You can clearly see the eye. You can see the Black Riders on their nasty beasts. There's a really good sense of, okay, how far have they got left? I really like that. And then as that went into the Gollum song on the closing titles, I remember, again, first time I saw it, opening day, Odeon Leicester Square. I remember the audience in unison kind of went like, oh, like that. Basically, it was like this kind of groaning cheer, and then it just went into a massive applause. I mean, it was a huge applause that went on for ages. Some people stood up, which is normally the standing ovation. It doesn't normally happen in cinemas. I've seen them maybe like 3 or 4 times, and Lord of the Rings: Two Towers was one that got a massive one.
And absolutely deserved.
Indeed. So we're going to be... Oh, that's quite a long stream for us. We went for 2 hours. We nearly went for 3 hours.
You point me in a topic like this, and you let me loose, and you have to rein me in.
No. There's no reining in of the Anna on this stream. We're going to be back on Tuesday with the Nielsen ratings. We'll be doing. We will do our usual thing. We'll review new stuff that's dropped on Amazon, that's dropped on Disney, that's dropped on Netflix, and so on. But one of the things we will be doing is we'll be talking about the work of. We lost one of the best actresses of her generation a few days ago. And again, this is, it's always, I don't know. I've got a list of people I would love to work with, and this lady was on it. I think I didn't realize that she was the age she was. Of course, I'm talking about Catherine O'Hara.
She was in her early 70s, right?
She was, and of course, the most recent thing that she did that I watched, and I watched the whole thing, was Schitt's Creek. But of course, she
was in Fallout, which is like she's been acting up till very recently. This is quite sudden.
Yeah, I mean, she had a short illness. Boom, she was gone. Huge shame. And I interviewed Jim Piddock, who played her husband in one of Christopher Guest's films. He played her husband in, I think it was A Mighty Wind. and
Mhm.
and he was saying that Catherine O'Hara and her husband would often, because I wrote him a message of condolence, and he said, you know, thanks, and they would often come over for dinner, sometimes even on Christmas, and they were really, you know, really deeply saddened by her passing. So we're definitely going to look at her films on Tuesday. I did a little stream about her the other day, but we'll definitely incorporate some stuff as by way of dedication for Catherine into our stream on Tuesday. We won't just talk about her stuff. We will look at the usual new things that are coming out. A final super chat from Darth Plato. The choice of trying the Black Gate or risking Cirith mirrors the Odyssey's choice of risking, I don't know how to pronounce that first one.
Charybdis.
Charybdis or is that Silica? Is that pronounced? So,
I think it's Scylla. I'm not a Greek and Aegean person, but that's a good comparison.
Did you go and see Avatar 3?
The most recent one? Yeah.
Yeah. So presumably you saw the big sort of 10-minute clip of the Odyssey at the beginning of it.
At the beginning?
Yeah. They showed
I arrived kind of late, or rather we
you?
arrived late. I think I missed it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize they'd even shown a clip of the Odyssey.
Yeah, no, it was it wasn't a trailer, it was like a 7-minute section, and it was to do with the War of Troy, and you know, the horse going inside the city, and then the guys, it's the whole sequence of them breaking out of the horse and then going to open the gates, and that whole section. Yeah, it's a shame you haven't seen it, because there's a lot of people talking about this film online. It has got a pretty good cast, but well, let's wait and see. But if it's predominantly going to be, I know, because the Odyssey is like, isn't it Homer's Odyssey we're talking about in terms of history?
Yes, although to what extent you can say that the Odyssey is historical is really difficult. Even the exact time period of it is difficult to nail down. People keep coming after me and are like, aren't you mad about the archaeology of it? Or what do you think about the archaeology of it? I'm like, I'm not a Greek and Aegean specialist. I'm really sorry. No. I can't tell you too much about what's accurate armor and what isn't. And
but isn't the stories contained within it are things like Jason and the Argonauts, the Theseus and the Minotaur? Isn't all those, they're all in there?
Is that where not in this case. Those are all separate myths.
Well, again, I'm also not a Greek mythology or history expert, so I'll absolve myself there. Let's have a quick look. There's more photos. Oh, there are. There's quite a few photos here. So,
from the point of view of costume design alone, I'm not the biggest fan of these costumes. And I mean, I did as an undergrad take a Greek and Aegean archaeology class, so I know a little bit more than I let on. But the main thing, though, this could be good. We'll see. Nolan's got an interesting track record. I'm not so upset about accuracy, because the whole idea is that Homer's Odyssey is mythological. It was mythological in its telling. It changed over time. It was probably told for several hundred years before the point of being written down. Was Homer even a real person, or was he sort of an amalgam of many poets? It's difficult to say. And so from the point of view of it being almost fantastical, having fantastical elements when it comes to, you know, the armor being super weird, some of that can be chalked down to artistic choice. Having them in Viking ships instead of triremes, okay, could also be artistic choice. Having those breastplates with the perfect funnel to run a sword point up into your throat, that's an artistic choice as well. Okay. And I guess it all comes down to the execution of it as a film. There will be some people who will be dead set against it from the beginning for various reasons. Some people who are real purists about armor and arms, and that's fine. Like, if that's why you go to see certain like movies, I think you can be fine saying, I'll give this one a miss, because no one has to watch or like every movie. I'm not that fascinated by this upcoming film though. Like I probably will see it, but I probably won't even see it the first week. And so I'm quite disappointing in my to friends who are like, I really need your opinion on this, because you're something like an archaeologist saying this gives you something of an authority. And I'm like, I'm not an authority at all, and like I don't have particularly strong feelings.
Well, it's definitely a film I will cover. It's going to be one of the biggies of 2026. It's historical, which means I'm naturally interested. It's Christopher Nolan, which means I'm naturally cautious. I'm not the biggest Nolan fan. Sometimes I just wish he would tell a story from start to finish in order, you know? And, you know, can you do a straight narrative? Do we have to kind of have circling flashbacks and all of that stuff? Because I Dunkirk felt like an art sort of piece, but I wasn't mad about it as a historical film. It was a very interesting and well shot, and it had lots of interesting things about it. But
well, I mean, in all things, those narratives can work really well. I was fascinated by The Prestige when I first saw it, when it came out, 2006, or was it 2005? And I rewatched it. Like I watched it several times when I was a teenager, and rewatched it again recently. I was like, oh, that's a good film. So it's all in the execution as well.
Yeah,
we shall see. But no,
one thing's for sure, it's not going to be no Lord of the Rings.
No, everything just pales in comparison, doesn't it?
It does, rather. Well, that's it for today. That's quite a long stream, but I loved every minute of it. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. Thanks to all the people in the chat. I had a couple of super chats there as well. That will all be very helpful when this winter's heating and electric bill comes and the rise will be somewhere in the region of probably about £500, which translates for the Americans watching into about $2,500. So, we will be back on Tuesday at 9 p.m. UK time, our new time, trying to avoid clashing with other people's streams, and also it's better for me to start a little bit earlier so I don't go to bed too late. 9 p.m. UK time, where we'll be doing a bit of dedication towards Catherine O'Hara and other things. Next week, probably at the same time on Sunday, may end up being Monday. We won't know until the day, but we will be doing The Return of the King. And that's going to be an interesting one, because there's so much stuff to choose from there for all of our categories. It's going to be hard to pick out one favorite, but we will do our best. So yeah, thank you to my co-host, Anna Snarkyologist. Great to have you.
Thank you, as always, for having me, for allowing me to yap about this for so long.
I couldn't ask for a better co-host on this topic. So the pleasure is absolutely all mine. Thanks to everyone for keeping the channel and helping it grow. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Spread the word. If you are a creative person, particularly an independent creative who has a project that's nearing completion and you want to get it a bit of publicity, get in touch with me, Kerry the Outcast Creative Facebook page, or you can find me on Twitter under Lance Nielsen WD. All the information is below, and maybe I can get you on as a guest to promote whatever it is you are getting up to. But I do try and speak to everybody. That's it for us. We will see you again real soon. Bye.
Cheers.
Misfits and dreamers getting innovative. It's film, TV, and theater in the mix. Industry interviews where ideas get their fix. He's creative, we're creative. How about you? Share your passion, join the crew. legend. Gail Ann Hurd.